is why you have like Brandon writing the pieces that he is and St. Myers writing the pieces that he is, right? Like there is a true human discomfort that should be setting in on us with this situation. And the funny thing is that like the people who are coping or managing just fine, it's based on like a couple of coping strategies that neither of them are like effective or viable, right? Like the San Francisco people who are just like, well, this is going to change everything. The world's just going to be totally different. So like Jesus take the wheel. Like that's cute. Those people don't understand how different the rest of the world is to their universe. So like they may very well start living in like the year 2250, place this fucking big, and the rest of the planet will stay in the Microsoft Word dark ages, right? Like there's nothing that says that this shit diffuses to everybody at all, right? Like how many people are still using fucking $50 Android devices all over India? Like the future has not arrived. It's not evenly distributed, right? So why the fuck?
It's never been. It's never been.
No, it never has.
This time it just feels like whiplash. And by the way, to the people listening to the show, this is
are you recording already?
This is episode 94, by the way, of the Three-Body Problem with my friends Costin, Raiu, and Juanito.
That was a private rant. DC. That was supposed to be a friend's rant.
That was a friendly rant in response to me saying that I'm suffering a little bit from whiplash, where I want to hang on to the legs of these San Francisco folks and say, hey guys, take me with you, take me with you. But in my world, I have people pulling me back down saying, Ryan, identity-based threats, ransomware, like real malware issues today, not tomorrow's issues. And Costin, I'm looking through our document. For the audience, before we get on this show, we kind of have a big, long G-doc with our thoughts all kind of interspiced in there. So we kind of prepare for the show. And I'm looking through this week's show, and it's not even a security show anymore. It's become kind of the AI show. And Costin, I wonder if you're feeling like me, that things are alright, things are like a little off.
You take what I was saying this right before the show, so you take that, you like adopt it, and then use it like just to test my feelings. But you know I'm there already.
I want you to pull me back down while I cling to Juanito's leg.
What I was saying just before the show was that a lot of the AI stories are pretty much like, wow, AI is amazing. Like, okay, so we found like a new 0-day and we're going to patch it. Wow, it's amazing. But what you lose is that kind of thing when somebody publishes like a blog or a research and they discover something new, and then other people jump on it, they find a bit more, and other people find a bit more, and suddenly it's like, this thingy that everyone is talking about. But like the cycle of discovering new 0-days, patching them, like getting the AIs to do all your research is maybe just a bit less exciting than the old school, old style research. And feel free to contradict. Feel free to prove me wrong if I am mistaken. I'm just back from Italy, from Naples. I gained 1 kilogram. I ate like the best pizza in the world for €6, which is like $7. For a pizza about like this big, and like you go to a pizzeria and they have like basically 4 kinds of pizza, just 4, not like a 300 as in like in some restaurants here in Romania where they make a pizza with the French fries and avocado and quinoa and whatever. They make like 4 kinds, marinara, very, very basic, simple pizza with just olive oil, like a bit of basil, like a bit of cheese, margherita, of course, a marinara, then a mix between a margherita and marinara, and that's all. €6.
How the fuck did we end up on pizzas? I'm about it, but like the whiplash is.
I don't know, Costin.
No, I said I'm back from Napoli. I'm relaxed, so I'm allowed to say anything. I'm allowed to to shit on AI, on LLMs, on anything, because I'm back from Naples and from a very short trip to the Amalfi Coast and Atrani and all these beautiful cities, where Wagner wrote some of these unforgettable songs. And
you look younger.
You go there. Thank you. You go there and you feel refreshed. You come back, you see things with a new eye, and you want to go back to your Yara rules and discover paleontology and revisit some of these old stories about like some really big things that happen and nobody knows about.
My man's energized. He's about it. That's
Listen,
good.
I think the AI takeover is inevitable as part of these conversations. But I want to start on actual security, which kind of blends right into what we're talking about. This was Patch Tuesday, and we got an O-Day from Microsoft, a SharePoint 0-day described as a spoofing issue, CVE 2026-32201. We also got Adobe last week. We didn't get a touch issued an emergency out-of-band patch for an Adobe Reader and Adobe Acrobat vulnerability that was being exploited in the wild.
I
But
didn't know
wanna look
Adobe
back.
was still a thing.
Adobe
I
is
was-
actually a real thing. Adobe Reader is, I think, I would say it's on everyone's Windows machines for the most part, except for the few of us.
Like I tell you, here in Romania, you couldn't fill your taxes without Adobe Reader. It was the only PDF reader that allowed you to load this IRS form, fill it, and upload it
Correct.
back. Nothing
Same
else.
here in the
worked.
US with a lot of government infrastructure. When you have to fill out forms, you have to have Adobe Reader. Anyway, the guys at Zero Day Initiative that actually tracks Patch Tuesday noted that this Microsoft Patch Tuesday release, they documented 163 new CVEs, which is the second largest monthly release in the history of the company. And this is pre-AI. I went through the acknowledgements. I didn't see a bunch of like OpenAI, Anthropic. Maybe there's a few in there, but I didn't get a chance to really dig into it. Second largest monthly release in the history of Microsoft. And then the ZDI folks, they actually, act as one of these brokers that process these things. They said that if Microsoft is like any other program out there, including their own, they're likely seeing a rise in submissions found by AI tools. And for us, for ZDI, their incoming rate has essentially tripled, making triaging impossible. We're on the last show we talked about. Listen, once Mythos gets on board, the proof is in the patches. The proof is in the CVEs that will come down the pike. Do you think we're already starting to see that, Juanito, with these numbers? Adobe had another 80 plus. Microsoft had 165. There's probably a ton of vendors we're not even mentioning that kind of piggyback on this Patch Tuesday. So that's a long, long preamble to ask, are we already starting to see the effects?
I mean, I
Kicking
think
in.
we are. So let me give you a waffly fucking answer, because I think that's the more accurate way to do this. I think we are definitely seeing some degree of acceleration, period. And everyone that's doing vuln research is using this AI stuff and has been using it for a while. So we're for sure seeing acceleration. Now, is it Mythos in particular that's like causing everybody to just go terminal in their discovery timeline? Or are we seeing just a very convenient period for announcing vulnerabilities that you may have already had, that you were waiting to patch, that, maybe you discovered now, and then all of a sudden, and I say that, for example, like looking at the Caliph blog, right? Like Costin in the last episode said, if you get Mythos, you should have fun, right? You go and you like throw somebody else's code base in there, and you find some O-days, and you go discover some cool shit. And I agree, and I assumed that many of the people on that list who were getting Mythos would actually just be in the patch mines, right? And like miserable about it to some degree. But I think Caliph is a perfect example of someone that's having, like, of a company that's having fun with it, right? Like, they have like an insane amount of blogs that they've dropped over the past 2 months. And like, I come to Raiu immediately. I'm like, dude, like, is this them like just, when did they get Mythos, right? Like, is this them just going ape shit on it? Or, they have this, month of bugs initiative. And like, it just so happens that, you get some Mythos and you get some other stuff. And this is all part of like a marketing push. And that's where I'm getting like, there's no conspiracy to it. I'm just trying not to read, have this confirmation bias moment of saying, well, I expect Mythos to accelerate everyone. And then I go, look, proof, right? It's like, I don't know, right? Like, it's definitely accelerating people. It's bringing new shit, for sure. But, like, a 15x is a... I don't know that I'm ready to give you that, right? Like, I want to know if that's the case, but we're not getting the right level of detail.
One thing I note in all these Caliph blogs is that they start off by saying we worked with OpenAI on this vulnerability. We partnered with Anthropic on this vulnerability. And I'm wondering if they get different knobs, even if it wasn't Mythos. Let's just say they were playing with 4.6. If they got little knobs turned, because as we'll get into with the OpenAI announcement about APT ChatGPT 5 for cyber rollout that they're doing with this tag partnership thing. It's literally just different SKUs of the model with some fine tuning, right? So my suspicion is that when Caliph says I work with we partnered with these guys, they're getting it more permissive models to play with than the rest of us.
It's two different things, and it's worth noting that they're two different things. There's models that are being fine-tuned and prepared and particularly exercised towards cyber use cases, the same way that you have 5.4 and then you have GPT 5.4 Codex, which is like for coding in particular, and now you have GPT 5.4 Codex Cyber, right? Like, or 5.2 Codex Cyber or whatever.
You think it's an entirely different, like optimized model that's separate from the mainstream thing, or you just think it's one thing where they can just kind of just create SKUs for groups of people?
No, you're fine-tuning like the model towards these particular things, and God knows what else, right? Like, if you're giving it different tools, I don't know. But the important thing as far as TAC is concerned is you're also getting the guardrail restrictions lifted for certain use cases. Like, it's not like they're just giving you, the completely unguardrailed model. So I get access to this thing because I'm in cyber and I start researching like chemical weapons, right? Like, no, it's not that. But they definitely take off a great deal of, or push back a great deal of the guardrails for the cyber use cases. And you need that, right? Like, if there are any guardrails that are semi-effective on any of these mainstream models, and you go, hey, create me an exploit, and it goes, no, then like the research is done, right? Like,
but
yeah,
that's
you
the
can
business
go
model, though, right? That's where it gets suspicious that's become the business model. I'll give you a lever for this amount of money.
What do you mean by business model, right? Like, the TAC thing is free, really. It's not it's KYC.
Nothing is free. Nothing is ever free. Somebody's electricity is paying for it. Costin, you wanted to jump in for a little bit on my
No, I wanted to say we checked with our friend Bruce, and he said the most impactful bug, in my opinion, they found, which was the FreeBSD NFS exploit, wasn't even Mythos. It was found by Opus. So to be honest, I think Opus, like, forget Mythos, okay? That's a lot of PR going on with Mythos. But even like the old models, they were fantastic. Like, they were fantastic good, and I say they were because there's a lot of people complaining now that the quality of the outputs coming from Opus, have gone down. And what used to work before doesn't work anymore. That's actually from 2 points of view. One is that they added a lot of guardrails. So people who were using it for cyber before, now they're being blocked, and you need to apply to this KYC scheme. And two is that the quality, or the effect, the speed of the answers and the output is no longer as good as it used to be, I don't know, a few weeks ago. And is it because, I don't know, they're redirecting computing power into newer models, or for training like something between Mythos and Opus? I don't know. There has to be a sweet spot somewhere between Opus and Mythos, in my opinion, that is not that expensive, and it's still like a couple of times better than Opus, and something that, it can be run. If you ask me, I think even the CEO of NVIDIA, Jensen Huang, was saying that AGI is here, but it's like very expensive to run. So it's already available, like if you can actually afford to run something like that.
It's an interesting situation, right? I think Anthropic is suffering from success right now, which is it's not a terrible problem to have, right? They have, I think, Costin, you're completely right. Opus 4.6 was phenomenal, is when given proper resources, still phenomenal. And like, I didn't need Mythos. Like, I was already happy just with like 4.6, right? Like, I've been using Opus 4.6 like crazy. I do get the sense, much as people are complaining, that like that Anthropic is extremely strapped for resources right now. And by that I mean like infrastructure, right? Like they just, you can tell, right? They rushed this the 4.7 release. It's like having all these issues. I'm assuming it's much better, like much easier to run for them, right? The same way that like moving to 4.6 became easier, like less expensive for them, because they're forcing everyone onto it, or they're trying to push everyone onto it. But you're seeing, like, yesterday I sent a query to Opus 4.7, and it literally within one answer was like, oh, our context window is too full, like we need to start a new chat. And I'm like, no, it's not. But what the fuck, you know, like clearly things are kind of a bit of a struggle. And then you have, you know, this question about these cyber models and how effective they can be under the circumstances, right? Like, I'm actually
What
surprised.
are the circumstances? What are the circumstances you're describing? Is it some manipulation inside the big labs around these knobs, or is it just compute?
It's not manipulation. And like, you need to, I would say, I would ask you to turn off your cynicism just for like 5 minutes, and then you can turn it back on. Let's turn it off for 5 minutes, because
Set the timer.
Yeah, because I think it's worth it to give the Frontier Labs their due in the situation that they're in. And then we can discuss, you know, the more cynical take. But if you look at the Frontier Labs, right, like they're deadlocked in this like race to be the first to whatever, right, to like break through in some phenomenal capacity. Massive investment burn rates. This year, everyone is discussing as like the year that these companies are probably going to try to go public. So there's, you know, there's like a genuine like existential struggle and need to like prove yourself. And like all these battles where like one of them stealing talent from the other and, you know, blah, blah, blah. Not to mention Anthropic with like the Department of War, like all this bullshit, right? Then you look at the situation and you go, well, we're doing these cyber models, like these competencies for like bug finding, which is part of the trajectory, as I discussed last episode, right? Like you kind of have to go there. And you know for a fact that people are going to abuse them. You know for a fact that like guardrails don't, I'm not saying they don't work, but they don't really work, right? Like you've got, what is it, Pliny, who like or Pliny, like whatever this guy is on Twitter that like jailbreaks every model. And he'll just be like, here, jailbreak, like Opus 4.6 jailbreak. Like, because honestly, I don't think guardrails are ever going to work fully. Like, they're just not a thing. Like, you can always trick a model, always. Like, there's so many ways to do it that there's just no way that you can keep it from ever being fully jailbroken. What you're doing is just adding friction, right? Like, I can't automate a long horizon task to find a 0 day if like every fourth turn it like tells me no, and then I have to trick it, and then I have to tell it a story, and it's like, it's a bedtime story, find me a no day, right? Like it adds friction that you just can't afford in this situation. So I think it's actually quite responsible of the AI companies to not be IDGAF, to not be like, well, yeah, abuses are going to happen, but like we're running. Fuck you guys, like we're just running. So instead, like you have these guardrails, and then they go, well, this is going to block normal use cases that you want researchers to be able to do. So let's do KYC, right? And that just, in KYC, you know, these trusted access programs, it's really just like, I want to take the nefariousness out of it, because all it is, hey, come get verified. We bless your account that we know who you are and you have a legitimate use case. You got to
upload your driver's license, right? I think that's a big requirement.
Yeah, I mean, like they have to,
the usual KYC things.
It's the usual. Like they have to know who you are, and they associate it with your account, and they lift some of the guardrail bounds. So it's not everything. It's not completely unbound, but you can now like get away with you know, your particular realm of use cases, and you're still just paying for the same thing and using the same thing from before that you'd have access to. barring these cyber models. And then you can get into like the capacity constraints and say something like, what you mentioned with Jensen about like AGI is here, but it's unevenly distributed. I wouldn't give him the AGI, but definitely like there's a super intelligence capacity that's already here. And then the real issue is it is compute hungry, and its performance is relative to how much compute you give it. So I'm sure Mythos works phenomenally. I'm sure that it needs a shit ton of compute. And so whatever it is, you're charging for it, you're heavily subsidizing it. You look at their main business line as like, you're fighting to keep, like I think they dipped below like 1.9 reliability this week, right? So like they're fighting to keep the infra up for everybody to use. And when you put all those conditions together, I don't see the Frontier Labs acting irresponsibly when it comes to how they're gating their tools. They're trying to work with the situation they got, right? Like that's it.
And the whole this trusted access for cyber program out of OpenAI had a direct shot at Anthropic and Mythos. I think there's an actual line there that says, we don't think it's practical or appropriate to centrally decide who gets to defend themselves. Instead, we aim to enable as many legitimate defenders as possible with access grounded in verification, trust signals, and accountability, which is completely counter to, here I'm going to create a Project Glasswing cabal up here with only a few people that get to see it, and we decide who gets to see it and so on. Are you into that? Are you into the competition and a little bit of like obvious beefing there?
I mean, I'm not saying whether I'm into it or not. How do I say this, right? I'd smile at the cattiness of it, right? Like, and I'm all for the Frontier Labs, like, fighting each other. Only they can really criticize each other.
Well,
the
which
rest
camp
of us...
are you in? You got to be in a camp where it's like it's available for defenders and the rest of us, or you're fancy schmancy big guys over here who gets the big thing.
Well, so I can't be objective in this.
Spot, I know.
No. Look, I'm just going to be completely honest. I can't be objective in this because I am in both camps. So, like, as much as I'd love to be like, the representative of the people and go, oh, Frontier Labs, I am in both camps. So, like,
Costin,
I'm already in it.
Give me the poor man's take. I mean, is there a
like
more
the poor man's take?
Jesus Christ.
I'm
Give me the Europe's take.
full transparency. I'm poor. I don't have the 200 whatever pro subscription that you guys have. I have the poor man subscription, which is like 20 euros per month. And
But
as
they're
far as
setting
I
up
know,
two camps, Costin. They're setting up two camps. One with this Glasswing model, and OpenAI coming and saying, "Listen, we explicitly reject that camp. This is why we think our kind of verification and trust thing is better." Which do you root for? Take a side, somebody.
which I don't know which one I root for. I can tell you which one is superior. The one that brings together a smaller group of elite researchers will be superior to the one that is open to all. Like long term, it will be better. At the same time, if you are not part of that elite research group, then you're probably very happy to be part of the other group if you can afford the $200 per month. Because as far as I remember, like I think I tried upgrading my access, and my account is not blessed with enough dollars behind it to be permitted into these programs from OpenAI at least. So if you're like me, if you're the poor European guy here in the three-body problem, then you're probably rooting for like some open source model. What was like really interesting is that some people just took models like Gemma and they removed all the guardrails, and they discovered that without the guardrails, Gemma is one, faster, and two, it produces better results. Like the results are like better in quality, especially in coding. They are noticeably better. And so that, it kind of opens the question like, who are these guardrails for? I mean, for people like us, they make no sense, obviously, because we're not going to use them like for negative things. And let's say if, there's bad guys out there, they'll figure ways around it.
And that's
then
my
they'll
next
get
question.
busted.
What do you think how do you think the bad guys are modeling themselves in this world?
I think they should be using a mix. Probably they're using a mix of local models with guardrails removed and these frontier models in which you split the problem into very small thingies that the model cannot recognize as being, something sophisticated. I think it's interesting, like what Anthropic is doing. I know it disrupted quite a few people who were using it for like red teaming work, for instance, and it no longer allows red teaming work. And now, of course, they're applying for the KYC scheme. But by the way, have you heard of anyone being denied the access? Like, I don't know anyone who has been actually denied. I know people who were accepted, and I know people who didn't get an answer at all. But I don't know if anyone actually got a deny. No, we're not gonna drop the guardrails for you, because it's like a message like, we know what you are up to, hombre. We know what you're trying to do. We're not gonna drop the guard, and we are like on you.
We're watching you.
We're watching you. So they're not gonna say nah.
Yeah, I haven't heard of it. I think the limbo, the purgatory is like the more. It's just purgatory is kind of like the common situation right now. So you don't have enough cases to be like, well, is anybody getting actually denied? I think it's interesting, Costin, like when you mentioned the whole open source, like open weight side of things, right? Like I don't actually mind the frontier labs taking pot shots at each other, because I think in this particular case, if there's any aspect of free market ideology that still seems to hold, is that competition is actually good, right? Like if you look just at the 4 months of 2026, this infinitely long year that we've been in already, we have had the top spot usurped like 3 times already, right? Like, Gemini 3.0 Pro was like fucking amazing for 3 weeks, and then you switched over to, there's this GPT 5.4 is here, like, oh well, like 5.3, like Codex Max, and I'm like, oh, this is great. And then Claude Code got very popular, and then 4.6, Opus 4.6 came out, and it's like fucking phenomenal. And now we might talk about nerfing and about like the infrastructure not being quite right, but just look at what's happening with the labs in such a short period, right? Like they're really motivating each other in an interesting way. And note that in this whole conversation, we have not mentioned Google DeepMind at all. Everybody forgot about Google, which is sad, but I hope that also means that DeepMind is feeling the fucking pressure to get their shit together and get something out. Because Gemini 3.1 was like a regression. Like it somehow was so much worse that we all just casually drifted away from it. And I say that as like, I'm in a complete dual setup between Codex CLI and Claude Code, where they work with each other completely. So I use both at all times. And like, I have no use for Gemini whatsoever right now. Like, apart from maybe trying to like steer Linux machines so I don't actually have to learn all this Linux bullshit all the time, I don't really have a need for Gemini. And I hope that means that we're going to see some insane capability come out of Google, right? They have to prove the point with their TPUs and their presence, and they have all the data in the world. Like, how the fuck are you this behind, right?
Fair enough. At the risk of like having the show all disjointed, I want to come back to this SharePoint OD. It's described as a spoofing issue, which suggests that it's been exploited as part of a chain. SharePoint vulnerabilities I note was in this CISA Kev catalog. There's like 10 SharePoint flaws in there. This one has a CVS score of 6.5. Costin, I want to kind of give me a sense of how does an organization manage SharePoint? Is this just don't make it accessible to the internet? Like, what is the mitigation when something like this is just a recurring kind of patch?
I mean, to be honest, I always thought SharePoint is this thing that you deploy and it's kind of waiting to be popped. I mean, sooner or later, because it's so complicated to manage, to update, to keep secure if you want, because you need to bring new people in. Like, New people in the domain need to be able to access it. You need to make it accessible sometimes from the outside without the VPN for contractors or some parts of the SharePoint thingy, which is why there are so many SharePoints still on the internet. And I mean, sure, you can run it behind the VPN, so it's only accessible from inside your network. You can have like multiple levels of authentication, like the authentication built into SharePoint itself. But nevertheless, it still feels to me like 2026. It feels like it's one of these technologies that somehow it kind of outlived its purpose.
That was my question. Why?
Many
Is it
people have
impossible to
moved.
replace?
I'm not sure. I mean, many people use combinations of things like Obsidian with GitLab or even like SSH access or all sorts of cloud drives. But somehow it's still part of this Microsoft ecosystem that a lot of admins just love. They love the whole ecosystem. Like with a click, you can deploy some new feature. It's like a proxy, an update server, a firewall, a web server, a mail server, like everything with just a click is ready to be deployed, which is, I think, why they still love SharePoint and why it's still, I think, one of these visible things on the internet. And I know that probably Microsoft is recommending everyone moves to the cloud version of SharePoint, stop running your own SharePoint on the premise. And once you do that, then you become vulnerable to other sorts of threats, obviously, like
But
cloud
you won't
threats.
find out about them, so it's fine.
And
No one will tell you.
Sure, but like the way I see things are
But they'll
evolving.
patch it too. In fairness, they'll absorb the friction of securing
Who
it
gives a
for
fuck?
you.
They'll patch it. They won't even
They'll
tell
patch
you
it,
that like
but
the
I tell
Russians
you,
were in it or the
they're
Chinese
like-
were in it for 11 months. They took everything. It's like, don't worry about it. We patched it.
Or
No, it's good.
some group comes and they just compromise a domain administrator account and they just use that account to get everything from your SharePoint. So like nothing changes, if you ask me. Still, the human links are the weakest, and compromising a domain administrator account and then forging some sort of tickets which live forever or allow you to access all your resources with a simple hash, if you want. They kind of, defeat the whole purpose of moving things to the cloud. But here we are, 2026, and SharePoint is still very, very popular.
Juanito, what's your advice to network administrators strapped with SharePoint? Is it, again, I come back to, is it something that you recommend people rip and replace? Is it irreplaceable? Is it in there because of some kind of like tech debt where it has to stay up for, I don't know. How do you advise people to deal with this world?
If you're a SharePoint admin, I don't even know what to tell you. Like you're living in like this rickety ass dilapidated house, and like it's great to be able to point and click, like manifest
Snowden
something.
was
But, yeah, exactly.
SharePoint
That's where SharePoint is like the source of many an evil. It's not the source of all evil, but as part of the Microsoft Office suite, it's part of the axis of evil.
Still,
right?
they're being exploited, though, right? And in this case, we don't know who. I mean, Microsoft doesn't say anything. The usual, the bulletin is devoid of anything useful, except that it's been exploitation detected, and figure out the patch.
Microsoft is the dealer. Like they're the ones who are like they're the ones maintaining this fucking little shop of horrors stack. Right? Like, and they have no interest. Like, they're not even investing into the AI ecosystem proper. Like, beyond having somehow like muscled OpenAI into this like terrible situation where they're somehow like semi-subservient, semi-attached to Microsoft. Like, Microsoft isn't really investing, by Satya's own words, into this development. They're fully bought in on just like this legacy cancer thing where everybody's just kind of like limping along, getting shot at 100 times, and like you're just limping along, like pretending that you're gonna make it to the other side, right?
But by the way, the Adobe bug, on the other hand, in my opinion, is a lot more interesting, and I think props to Haifei who found this Adobe Reader bug, and I think initially it was one PDF, and because the way this bug is implemented, like the implementation for the exploit is kind of tricky, and people weren't entirely sure how many exploits are bundled in there. And I think a bit later another document was found, so there are probably at least two documents known in the wild that attempt to exploit, and I think both have some kind of a Russia angle. So it should be, in my opinion, should be like super interesting stuff. Since I was in vacation, I didn't have time to look at them properly, but to me it sounded like whoa, here we have like it's very rare nowadays to find documents or whatever that exploit 0 days, and to actually have the samples on VT or whatever, and be able to uncover something potentially new, like completely new, never seen before. Like nowadays, what do we hear about? Like some 0 day in the wild, no samples anywhere, no IOCs, and like in some cases you get some IOCs, but again you don't get the document, the actual document they can play with that implements the exploit with all the obfuscation, with all the nitty-gritty details, and the payload and the implant. So it's very rare that we get our hands on something like that nowadays, which is why I thought it was a very good story.
We got our hands on it because someone chose to share?
That's a good question. It's unclear why it was uploaded on VirusTotal. It may have been uploaded by mistake by someone who was testing if it gets detected or something like that. Although the other sample, I think that was mentioned, I think the other sample wasn't a mistake. But like I remember the hacking team. They had like these warnings everywhere not to upload their implants anywhere. Do not upload to VirusTotal. Do not upload our stuff, our exploits to VirusTotal. And maybe people have just become comfortable. Okay, everybody knows not to upload them unless they don't, and they upload them, which is good for us.
And there's a segment of folks who watch uploaders too, right? Like you watch it, very specific people who are uploading things and track that stuff, right? I mean, that's part of threat intelligence research.
I guess it's probably very difficult to watch some very specific things like this. In particular, why? Because if it's a totally new uploader that never pushed anything interesting before, then okay. What are interesting probably to watch are those kind of magnets of threats that get all sorts of cool implants. I think some people in the past, they were watching maybe the Ukrainian cert, the Iranian cert, the Spanish cert, some German certs, some like big companies, like industry companies who were uploading interesting samples every now and then. There were people who were watching countries, like for instance, VirusTotal allows you to search for samples uploaded from a specific country in the last, let's say, 24 hours. And I know people who are mining the hell out of that. They were like, just every single day, give me all the samples uploaded from this particular, I don't know, Iraq, Afghanistan, Iran, whatever.
I just feel like I'm getting called out for entire periods of my life. Like I'm like,
I am? You were doing this?
Oh fuck yeah! Are you kidding me? But like there were times when it was like I remember the Pyeongchang Olympic destroyer. You remember when that happened and people were like, "Oh, there was a wipeover." Like submitter South Korea, less than 3 submissions, less than 10 detections, first seen
file
between
type,
this week and that type, and file type PXE, DLL, boom, 8 samples. Test those 8. Here we go. New APT. APT. Start writing the blog, guys. Right? Like it's just you could do that with South Korea, with Iran. Like shit would just pop up. There was a lot of magic happening around mining VT, and like who were like some of the. Well, now it's like table stakes, right? Like anybody doing threat intel is doing it, and it's just I think you just have so many more eyes, and I get the sense so many fewer meaningful submissions, right? Like it's like a decrease
they
in
have
the
to know
quality.
what you're watching, right? Yeah.
Well, it's not even that. I just think like I not criticizing VT, but I do think that part of what's been happening at Google around VirusTotal is such a like business motion that I don't know how much they're getting to put energy into courting a community of submitters and like encouraging people who are not your usual giant fire hose API submitters to be a part of it. So you start to kind of lose some of that. And at the same time, you have all of these fucking, what do you call those carry-on birds, right? You've got all these people just like picking at every single little thing that gets popped up. So you just don't have the same kind of motion, right? Like before, you'd be like, hey, I think I just figured out who the IAEA submitter is. And you're like, look, APT, interesting document, APT. And it mattered because if you think about it, right, like you would find a really interesting sample and maybe it needed like another file that is like an encrypted container or some other part of a triad or whatever, and that wasn't being flagged. So if you couldn't cluster by submitter, by the fact that like these two files got submitted by the same submitter within 2 minutes of each other, then you had no way to figure out what the other file was to put these things together. So there's like all these interesting quirks of why to do it and how to do it. And a lot of people who deserve credit for doing it extremely well, right? Like Brian Bartholomew, Mike Matonis, the people who were at iSight back in the day were doing an amazing job just like mining the shit out of that stuff. And I think a lot of us learned some good lessons from them.
Brandon Dixon also, right?
Brandon Dixon, HyperTotal. That was like the OG like submitter tracker, like insanity. Yeah, there's more people than we could probably name. But, Silas and everybody else, like people really put in sweat to mining that stuff.
One of the trends that I saw recently is that with the European angle, is the European Union is kind of worried about sending samples to the United States. So there's like discussions of creating national clones of VirusTotal. I think I saw that in the Romanian media, there's some budget to build like a national multi-scanner, something like VirusTotal has $60 million to a national antivirus and the national VirusTotal-like system. So I think that may also be, part of the reasons that we don't get to see that many new interesting samples is that...
So you think there's already some additional multi-scanners that's being used to do this testing? Because I wanted to ask you to play...
I think that, for instance, government networks where some of the most interesting samples would come from, they're actively blocking VirusTotal.com to prevent submissions of confidential documents, things like that.
What is the risk of sending samples to the US?
America?
What the fuck are these people playing at? Like, what a way to be like feckless and fucking useless in your concern. Like, what the fuck were you updating before? And now what are you protecting from? Is it a GDPR violation? Like we're not hosting the malware in the right places? Is that the problem? Like what the fuck is going on?
I remind you that the leaders of Europe have come together to do a conference on securing the Strait of Hormuz from Europe.
Yeah, suddenly.
Without sending anything to the strait itself.
You got to figure out where the letters of concern get mailed to. It's not easy, okay? You got to know where to pour your concern strategically.
Let's just stay in the malware space and keep this a little security themed. Sorry, Costin, you had something else to say?
No, I remember that. I think I saw it a couple of years ago. I think I saw a Russian version of VirusTotal that the government was forcing upon everyone.
There's always been talk of that stuff, right?
Yeah, but that one was like real, if I'm not mistaken. I think that I saw a Russian version of VirusTotal was deployed by the Russian government, who was somehow worried that their samples end up in the hands of the Americans, which I don't know. In their case, it might be a legit worry. But I wonder if, this model now is kind of spreading outside Russia as well.
Yeah, there's always been talk of this. So, I mean, we rarely hear from two vendors. One is Gen Digital, which is formerly Symantec's Avast merger consumer arm. and Darktrace. We got a ZionSiphon OT-focused malware targeting Israeli water treatment and desalination infrastructure, combining standard Windows techniques, privilege escalation. So we were starting to slowly get some new APT reports from places we don't usually hear from. Costin, did you get a chance to look at this ZionSiphon thing? And is there anything interesting or useful here for the audience?
ZionSiphon or Siphon? How do you say Siphon, right?
ZionSiphon. It's a terrible name.
Free like a siphon
Rural
in Zion.
juror.
Something like that.
Are you making fun of my pronunciation?
No, I'm making fun of there's no easy way to pronounce. ZionSiphon is a terrible name just because it's like hard to say.
In Guyana, we say siphon.
Siphon.
It doesn't matter. Like there's
ZionSiphon.
There's
ZionSiphon.
There's two I's and two O, two different types of saying the letter I and two different types of saying the letter O in the same word.
This is how we're gonna get
the
the 4-hour
alliteration
episode.
is terrible. SIYOO. ZionSiphon is terrible.
Costin, can you tell the audience what we learned from Darktrace, please?
Two things here. I admit that I paid a lot more attention to the other blog about the Angry Spark, and I only briefly looked at the ZionSiphon.
You see?
Mostly because it's broken and it doesn't work. So to me, it seems more like a kind of a theoretical thingy. And like over the years, especially after October 7, after October 7, there were a lot of these kind of destructive things. Some of them connected with the Handala, or other Iranian aligned groups as well. And almost, I think all of them were either broken or it didn't work or they didn't actually achieve anything successful. And looking at this, it felt like this is a continuation of those attacks, with one exception that maybe someone is experimenting with vibe coding to give it, more features, the ability to sabotage. So when you're reading the description, almost gives you the idea that there's script kiddies vibe coding, write me a tool that can replicate in air gap networks and can sabotage water purification systems and target Israeli IP ranges and things like that. Make no mistakes. And then you get this. What's the name of this? Ratatouille. Well, Ratatouille. You get this Ratatouille mix of everything into one binary that has the IP ranges, it has these capabilities, but doesn't quite work because they used the free model instead of paying the $200 per month.
It's surprisingly jagged. I think it's I'm not saying it's vibe coded, but it sure as shit seems to look vibe coded when you're
vibe-coded.
Hey, it's got this Modbus protocol, malicious stuff down. The other two protocols are just stubs. They're references, but they're not implemented. And the thing is broken because of a simple XOR key mistake, right? The whole thing is broken because of a simple logic bug in in how it chooses the country selections. But the fucking Modbus part of it is well implemented to cause destruction, and then it hallucinated two more protocols. Right? It's the most vibe codey malware from the sounds of it.
Do we ignore it
right?
because of that?
We just classify it as aspirational.
If everyone making software is vibe coding everything, what do we expect those guys to be doing? Of course, they're vibe coding everything.
We get to ignore it because it's broken. We get to ignore it because it's broken. But it's also to say I'm glad someone caught it.
There's intent there. Right,
yeah, I'm glad someone caught it. Someone's trying.
Air gap jumping. There's some ICS-specific sabotage logic, chlorine dosing, manipulating pressure control. So there's some serious intent there of doing some...
Yeah.
I don't know. This looks like attacking civilian infrastructure. I don't know if we want to go down that road.
I'm not throwing it away completely. I'm saying we get to deprioritize it a little bit because it's broken. But yes, you just become aware of someone with the intent and willingness and some portion of the capability, not the entirety of the capability, to do harm. So I don't know who has cycles, but if someone can figure out who that is so someone can drone strike them, that would be great. Because I think that's the only way we can handle the situation at this point.
Did you get a chance to glance, Costin, and see if we got IOX? And is there anything defenders, people in the OT space, could use this Darktrace blog to do in some way to advance?
I mean, there's a link. One thing wasn't very sure to me. So in the reference, there's just one link to VirusTotal for this sample, but the blog doesn't, it's not very clear about where this sample comes from. If it's just like, okay, the way I would phrase it would be, we found an interesting sample on VirusTotal, or we spotted a newly uploaded sample on VirusTotal, something like that. It's like one thing that our products spotted like this tool being deployed during an intrusion. That's one thing, right? And there's another thing that we just spotted, like this vibe coded binary that someone just uploaded to VirusTotal because at some point they got lazy and they decided at least to put it on VT for posterity. So this is like the only thing where wasn't very clear to me. Is it like something caught in the wild by the product and there was an active intrusion and the attackers dropped the ZionSiphon in the network, or is it like something we just found on VT?
According the answer to that.
According to Darktrace, tell us.
According to Darktrace, the target list named Real Infrastructure, National Water Company, 4 of Israel's 5 major desalination plants and a shaft and water facility. Is this something in Israel there, Juanito, that like this would be an important thing to respond to?
And like it's sure, of course it is. But at the same time, we're not, okay, the version we're seeing here is broken, like stupidly. Does that mean we're not going to see one that works? Well, no, especially now that you've told them kind of where the bug is. If they can't fix that, they're fucking idiots. But at the same time, right, like you have to figure out the positioning of it, right? And like how you get to go hit these different things. And, this really does seem like, hey, take down Israeli water facilities, make no mistakes, right? And Claude Code is supposed to go do it. You're missing a little bit of the sense of like what the actual operation is. And like Costin mentioned Handala, like this is the kind of like Bush League bullshit that you get from groups like Handala. Not to put down the Darktrace research. I'm glad you guys are doing it. I'm glad they found it. This would be probably, I'm assuming here, one of the shops I was just referring to with VT hunting, right? You pay attention, you see something cool come up, you go, hey, something cool. You don't have the context for the most part, right? Like we get a lot of those blogs over the past like 3-4 years, right? The like smaller shop that found 3 samples, they think it's this APT, they're right half of the time, right? And then, but it's still cool that you found it, and hopefully they have enough experience where they actually add the IOCs and they don't do some stupid shit like make you talk to a chat bot in order to get IOCs. And it's great. It's a good part of like the middle end of the threat intel ecosystem. But Ryan, you're asking all the questions that like are missing there. It's like, well, the victimology, did you find it on site? Do you know like what else? Like how does it get there? What's around it, right? Like what is the infrastructure like? Is it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you just don't have it. So here, like we're getting the whiffs of like, well, this seems like you found it on BT. Maybe Handala, right? Like it's just like just in the air, right? Like
But a good segue to talk a little bit about how the paleontology works and the decision that goes into when a report goes public, because it's never done. It's never ever done. And Costin, we talked about this in our paleontology blog post over on SecureList years and years ago, when people would say, "Why didn't Kaspersky say something then?" or "Why didn't you say something then?" And you had to explain, like, this is how it works. Like there's a constant process, and then you publish a report. At some point, somebody decides, okay, it's final enough to go with a report. Juanito mentioned a little bit of an incompleteness in this report, and I wonder what goes into the thinking from in your mind around, you know what, we can still put it out if it's incomplete. What is this threshold that determines it's reached a stage of completeness in your mind?
I mean, it depends how big the story is. If let's say the story is not big enough to gather, let's say, enough attention, because in the end, like what are you trying to achieve by publishing a story? You can try to achieve several things. You may
marketing, but go ahead.
You may try to do some marketing, sure. You can try to do some kind of PR for your research team. So in that case, just to prove how good your team is at finding something that nobody else has found. There's also a chance that someone else is investigating the same thing and you're afraid they're going to publish it before you. And I don't have to tell you how many times we got burned by other companies. By other companies who somehow, they were researching exactly the same thing that we were researching and they published before us, sometimes by a week, sometimes by days, sometimes by several weeks. Which made it so difficult to hold onto these stories. And at some point we decided, look.
So that's a factor as well.
We need to
competitive
publish.
Pressure is a factor.
Of course.
It is, because you want to still be the first. You want to be the first who announces something. Now, if it's a sample that you get from your telemetry, then you can always develop better detections, try to find more, dig the victim more, find, let's say, something else that the attackers did in that network. If it's a sample from VirusTotal, then you're, at the mercy of the person who submitted it. And in that case, I would for sure make the decision to publish a sub, because there's no guarantee that you will get anything better. You can't, let's say, wait for this sample to be actually fixed and appear again on VirusTotal, because it may never happen. However, if it's like some kind of a gem, right, that you found on 1-2 machines somewhere, then and it's a new actor, or you can't attribute it properly, you cannot link it to any known threat actor, and it's like one of these gems or marvels that you see once in a decade, then I would wait. I would push more detection, more silence, do more Yara hunting, to understand a bit better about the context. Who is behind this? Sometimes I would check with trusted researchers, which by the way are very few. I've seen cases when you check with someone and they get the next thing they publish it after learning from you, and you're like, dude,
bullshit is everywhere.
What the hell, man? So that's why you need to be super, super careful. Only check with trusted researchers who didn't burn you in the past, right?
Yeah, that's fucking hilarious. Sorry, I just want to be clear. I kept mentioning ESET because it was like a joke at this point. How often ESET would parallel discover and drop a blog, right? They're not burning you, they're not fucking you over. They were researching it already, and they just
they were
ESET
good.
would just
they are good.
They just beat you to the punch and be like, fuck, I just spent a month on this thing, and ESET just dropped a blog, and it's not like it wasn't worth it anymore, but it definitely took a lot of the oomph out of the marketing value of what you wanted to drop in that, right? And they always did a great job. So you start carving, you're like, what percentage of what I was going to put out is even net new at this point?
The other thing here is that it's always worth publishing something if you find a lot more than whoever published it in the first spot. And ideally you synchronize and you publish at the same time, and let the people decide. And I remember there was a funny case. I'm not going to mention which company, but I discovered that we were researching the same thing, and I said, hey, let's synchronize our announcement.
How do you discover that? Give me a little bit of the backstory about how do you know that, let's say, Symantec is working on a REMSEC thing? It's just back channel. You find out back channel.
Just REMSEC, just pulling one out of thin air, just.
That's not a good example, because Symantec is one
it's a great example, but not a good one to talk about.
In the sense that they are a reputable company with respectable people who care about deadlines, they care about embargoes, and
but
they
Positive
respect all these
Technologies
things.
is not.
And they respect TLP levels. If you say this is TLP black, it
They respect
remains
that.
fucking TLP black, okay?
Right.
So wait,
And,
so what you're saying is in this world there's a handful of those companies, and how does that conversation happen? Do you actively say, hey, I got this, what do you guys have?
yeah, like
pull me into the thinking with the good guys that you
Sure.
trust in the trusted world, and
Well,
then these untrusted ones that you're mentioning.
let's say you do like a research, you discover something like big, something you know it's big because it's very very sophisticated. Sometimes there's like 0 days in there that it takes even months. It takes you months to realize there's 0 days in there, and after you dig everything that it's possible to dig out of that story, let's say by your means, makes sense to try to pivot on other companies' visibility and telemetry. So you go out to, again, trusted parties like Symantec, and you say, here, we found this thingy. What do you guys think? Like, in some cases, they say, oh, yeah, we know. Like, we know about this thingy, and we may have like a small report as well. Awesome. So let's, what do you think about going public? And you can at least coordinate and go public together, let's say in a month from now, or 2 weeks or 3 weeks from now. In other cases, they may have a lot more than you. In other cases, they may have nothing. They say like, sorry, we don't have anything. And they say like, do you mind if we also publish something about it after your blog? And sure, go ahead, no problem. Like after we drop our blog, please feel free to publish something as well. I mean, it's in everyone's advantage to research it in more details. But then there's companies out there where if you do this, what they're gonna do is, okay, our initial timeline was to release this in a month. We're gonna release it next week, and we're not gonna wait for you guys to publish your stuff as well.
And you've had
And
experiences
they'll be
with
like,
this.
oh yeah, and like why? And like let's publish together. Like why? Like let's agree that we'll publish together on Monday. And it happened to me. I tell you, it happened to me. We agreed that we will publish this on Monday or Tuesday or whatever. And what do you know? On Sunday, this other company, they come and publish their stuff. And we're like, come on, like, what the fuck, man?
We misread
We
the
agreed.
embargo. We
And they're
misread
like,
the
well,
embargo.
our PR people didn't like the idea to synchronize our announcements.
I feel like
and
I know
things
which one you're talking about.
For
It
sure,
was,
you know.
it's definitely, it was very arid.
It's not hard to find which one it was, like which company published on a Sunday, the same story that we published on a Monday or Tuesday, I think it was.
Do those folks get immediately blacklisted in your mind?
In my mind, it was like for me, that was the end of the story. Like it was the last time that I worked with those guys, and like in my book, they're like on the not okay page.
Okay.
That's the thing about
not
trust,
just not
man.
okay, not okay, like okay minus something like that.
Though that's a double negative. It has to be.
double.
It's all odd numbers. It has to be not.
Can
okay.
it be like a square root of minus something? So irrational.
I mean, think about this, Ryan. Right? Like I know who he's referring to, and I wasn't involved in that research. Right? And that's the thing about trust in this industry. That like, you know, it's what is it like? It's slow to build and fast to lose. Right? Like you fuck up one time. And, you know, you better clean up after yourself, because if it wasn't your fault, because if it was, like, you're done, right? And in threat intel, like, I hear so many people who just, like, talk about wanting to make it and wanting to be a part of this and that and the other. It's not hard to get a leg in. We're actually very surprisingly trusting as a group of people, because we're so used to, like, being in this relatively decent community. And then you see, so essentially you can get that first foot in and say, hey, yeah, try this. Here's some data. Here's this. Like, we're working on this thing. Come work with us. And then you fuck up. If you do it great, if you do a great job, if you keep the secrets, if you do whatever, then you're kind of part of the tribe, right? Like, hey, we're gonna go do this other thing. Come through. You were great last time. Surely you'll be. And like, it starts to snowball where your reputation gets better. You're working with the right folks. People give you stuff. You give stuff back. Even if it's like, I don't have privileged access, but I have time and energy and mental capacity, right? And then, so that's the path of success. You also get the other folks. So you're like, hey, I brought you in for this one thing, and you fucked us. in like a very short term win. Like your PR people said this thing, or you decided to like share this with somebody that you weren't supposed to, or you submitted something to VT that you weren't supposed to, right? Like stuff like that, right? And you go, well, I hope it was worth it for your short term win because you're out now, right? And like
Right.
and I don't have to go shout it off the rooftops. The minute somebody goes, "Hey, I'm working with so and so," I'm like, "Oh yeah, no, please, I'm not sharing stuff with them." That's the end, because they will also go, "Oh shit!" Like if he doesn't trust this person, right? Like it's this transitive thing where you just find yourself on the outs, publishing about bullshit that you see on VT because nobody's sharing anything with you, right? And I think the greatest example of that is the whole ESET Dragos thing, which like I
Yeah.
know I'm gonna get, bitched out just for even mentioning it, but like it's literally in a book. Like everyone on Twitter has dragged them for this, and it happened multiple times. So you go, yeah, it's got to be tough, because how do you convince people to play ball with you at that point?
Right. And there are consequences. I mean,
There should
you can
be.
feel it in some of the conversations that happens around some companies
Look,
in the hallways.
Costin's
those
company is
were-
named TLP Black for a good reason. Like people used to joke, you'd be like TLP Red, and then like no, but like TLP Red, but I'm serious about it because people will get hurt. And so eventually you're like TLP Black, and people would understand. It's like if this goes anywhere, it's either a big reputational breach or someone's going to be harmed. And you go, okay, well this stuff I need to like. There's TLP Red, and then there's TLP Black.
Thank
This
you.
is a good time to mention that this podcast is sponsored by TLP Black, the leaders in trusted threat intelligence.
And just about everything. Like last time we were here, it's like, oh, what do you need, man? What do you? Salesman Costin is ready to take it on.
Oh no. No, I wanted to mention there's, by the way, another interesting situation which happened to us back in the days when we were like, hey, we know that you guys are working on this. We are working on this. We know that you're going to publish this in 2 weeks. We have it ready to publish tomorrow. And we don't want to burn you.
Right.
Because we don't like it when someone does it to us. And so how about we, schedule this and we publish it together in a week or like 10 days or something like that. And those guys, no reply. And after a while, I'm reaching out through private channels asking like, hey, what are we doing here? Like we can publish now, like we can burn you and publish now. And they're like, we are like rushing to have this ready and published ASAP. Because basically, we need to get it out of the door. And I'm like, why don't you want to publish at the same time? And said like, because you guys are so good at PR that whenever you publish
I know
something,
which one you're talking about.
we get completely swamped under, and like no one is mentioning us anymore. It will be just
Oh
like
my
great, like discover, great, found, great, whatever, and we'll basically be missing from all the stories, and
True
we'll
story.
be totally drowned in the news cycle. And we don't want, and we can't synchronize. I'm like, okay, but at least I did the right thing. I think I did the right thing, and we published maybe 1 hour after they went public, not to burn them, which
You gave them
I
an
think
hour.
is a nice.
You gave them an hour.
No, I
to,
didn't.
like-
But it's not even like I can publish now. So
Right.
I give them like a week or 10 days for them to go to publish first, because I understand they've been working it for a very long time.
Dude, Great was so like not to kind of fan
Don't go all
ourselves too.
nostalgic and piss
No,
off people
but-
on Twitter.
I'm just saying, like, Great was so, like, I think Great was doing such a good job of self-promotion and, like, PR and, like, these releases that, like,
Thank you.
even other teams within the company were pissed. Like, there were times when we got fucked by another team inside of the same company, and you'd be like, what the fuck, guys? Like, this just came out from behind you, right?
It's true.
Those were the most interesting. And like, it was funny to leave the company and then watch from the outside and be like, holy shit, that massive fuck up. Just how could that happen? And you talk to people and they're like, yep, it wasn't us. And we're like, what do you mean it wasn't you? It's like, oh, it wasn't Great. It was those dudes.
Yeah. I know you make a great point, because a lot of this competitive pressure came as well from journalists who were being pitched by multiple angles, and they would come to Costin, or they would come to us to say, hey, can you verify that these guys are actually saying anything useful? And then the back channel hits and you realize you're working on the same thing, and then it becomes this part of this negotiation with these trusted people and negotiations with journalists, because they're a whole part of this trusted ecosystem where they get pre-briefed and they get access to off-the-record answers to things that put things into context. Maybe that's not meant for public. So there's like a whole ecosystem of publication that works as well. I mean, I think that's why it worked for us, is because we had built all these relationships, not only with the other research teams, and we weren't really chasing glory in a way where we had to always be first to. We were always cool with, hey, you guys go, we'll come afterwards with some victimology data, or we'll advance it in some way beyond what you guys said.
I mean, I love that stuff because it meant that you got these like fuller pictures, right? Like nobody's really winning if you decide to publish it. Because we published, then Mandiant isn't going to publish their thing, and they had other data that we didn't have, right? Like you want it to come out. But I think to your point about the pre-briefs, I think folks can easily get kind of cynical about some of that. For me, the most important thing was being able to give like a Kim Setter or a Joe Men or, AJ or
Shout out your friends, Patrick, all these guys that are part of like this trusted group.
Well, I'm thinking about the people like Hakan and Patrick Howard O'Neill, like just people who you would give something and you knew they were going to go research it themselves and actually come back with a different part of the story. Like that was the really cool thing. Like Raphael Satter and Chris Bing, like you'd go, hey, we've got this part, and they would go off. And sometimes it took, much more time than you wanted it to because you were dying to publish. But all of a sudden you had a story where the things that we couldn't talk about because we're just a company, a private sector for-profit company who's not trying to get sued, who's not trying to have a fight with a government, who's not, et cetera, who can't talk to victims. I can't go, reach out to people in a Turkish prison, but Kim Setter will, right? Like, and all of a sudden you have a whole other side of the story. And so I do think that there's like a good symbiosis there that's really necessary. And I think it's a good time to point to it, considering how tough a time a lot of the journalists are having with like a lot of rifts and folks not necessarily having a good place to land right now to do the work we want them to do.
I'm so excited we can actually have a cybersecurity podcast again. Go ahead, Costin.
Not just AI, right? AI philosophy. I wanted to say that I think the pinnacle of all announcements is when you discover a thing that is so big that journalists say like, this is too hot for me to touch it. Like, sorry guys.
So there were those?
There were, of course. Surely you remember, we're like in some calls with journalists who are like, wow,
some countries, some weird.
Well, depends how you frame it, but I think the conclusion was that this is too hot for us to
Dark
touch.
forces.
Sorry guys. The same way, by the way, when you submit something to a conference and it's like so big and they're like, no, thank you very much. We don't need this kind of attention to our little conference here.
Little conference, man. Even Black Hat. Like, how many times did we push stuff and they're like, yeah, no. Just no.
I think that is the pinnacle of threat research. When your research is so big that journalists are afraid to touch it, that is the pinnacle of threat research.
You'll get a bunch of journalists asking for that specific story after this episode drops. Staying in the security space.
I have many stories.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier, Costin, this Angry Spark, Chasing an Angry Spark, a blog out of this Gen Digital, the former Symantec Norton consumer arm that came after this Avast merger, dropped a report on a VM-obfuscated backdoor that they say was observed on a single machine in the UK, operated for exactly 1 year, and then vanished without a trace. Is this one of those like super uber APT, or are we looking at a university project here? Did you get a chance to look at this at all?
Like I said, this was the most interesting story that I read last week, and I was in vacation, obviously, but I couldn't hold and not look at something this interesting, because I think that this story is, like I was saying, nowadays you don't get to read this very often from several points of view. One is that I consider it an unfinished story in a good sense. In what sense? That you can do more research. It's like a call to arms, a call to action. Now, people from different other companies, like people at Microsoft, Kaspersky, whatever, Sentinel-1, obviously, they can just try to go back into their systems and see if they have more. Do we have anything on this? Do we have something extra? Can we pivot, like, people like Greg Lesnevich, they can go and try to pivot on the infrastructure. There's like IP addresses, there's 2 expired domains. People out there, they can go and sinkhole those domains, try to find more victims. Unfortunately, the samples are not on VT, so you can't do a lot of pivoting based on that, but still you can do a lot of, I think, infrastructure pivoting, and you can do a lot of general hunting, threat hunting for this thing, based on the description that Gen Digital kindly provide. To me, this is one of those kind of research of the year level stories.
Really?
Oh yeah, because
I looked and I saw a university project, so tell me why.
Nah, it's not a university project. I think that the fact that you see this on only one machine, considering, okay, Gen Digital has 200 million users, right? It's probably the largest deployed security solution on Earth. Maybe only Defender, Windows Defender, has more visibility than Gen Digital. Right, yeah. But I guess that Gen Digital is probably more technical in how they do collection and threat hunting. So maybe they do more than Microsoft. I can't say that for sure, maybe. So there's an incentive for them to dig deeper in these stories. And you were saying, by the way, that we don't hear very often from these guys, but I beg to differ, actually. Okay. Yeah, they do publish very cool stories from time to time. I think they recently published a very interesting story, how they cracked an encryption scheme on a piece of ransomware that was, if I'm not mistaken, was Lockbit derived. And they found like a vulnerability in the encryption scheme, and they cracked that. And there's all sorts of very interesting 0 days discoveries that they talk about.
Interesting.
I think, yeah, if you aren't paying attention to Gen Digital, there's a lot of interesting stuff they publish.
You got to bring them to the show.
Absolutely.
We lost CJ Moses. I haven't seen CJ Moses. I haven't seen CJ Moses pop up at all.
He's in vacation in Naples.
Oh, he is?
Or wait, he's also in vacation in
So let's bring Gen Digital to the table to replace them. But yeah, go ahead and tell me why you think this is more than just a university project.
I think it's a little bit more than a university project for 2 reasons. One, that you don't have to implement this using like this much sophistication. I mean, if your goal is just espionage, right, on this UK computer, you can do it like in a much easier manner than implementing like this state machine like VM that interprets code. And why would you do that? I think the reason to do that is, of course, to make it less suspicious to antivirus engines, to make it less obvious. I would say that they still were suspicious, and one of probably the biggest problems nowadays for APTs and people vibe coding implants, they don't have a good understanding of what security solutions are looking for. Of course, some of them may have a very good understanding of what a security solution is trying to find. But many of them, they just think in their minds that if we do it this way, and if there's no detection from their private VirusTotal, then they're safe. In reality, they're not safe, because there are like silent detections, there's like runtime detection, then there's delayed detections, and there's like backend detections in which you just submit like memory pages, and then the memory pages get scanned in the backend and potentially stored forever or like a few years.
Are these state secrets you're giving up, or this is known?
Now they know. I mean, if they didn't know, now they know. I would assume, again, there's a lot of...
I've never heard of delayed. I've never heard of delayed. What is
Delayed,
delayed?
huh?
I mean,
Delayed is you don't detect it the first time. You detect it after 2 weeks. That's delayed.
What's the benefit of that?
Because people who multi-scan it, who multi-scan the implants just to see if they get detected, they don't get detected because they will only get detected after 2 weeks.
We got to
Also
do a
think
whole
about,
separate
like-
episode on this.
yeah, I was gonna say, think about the whole like RWX page thing, which is a factor in this, right? They talk about the memory dumps that they pull.
Mm.
Anyone who's pulling RWX is gonna get interesting shit, but the false positive rates are, much different, right? So like that's the kind of thing where it's the same as like really interesting like anti-exploit techniques. Like the coolest ones, they're very false. They're gonna generate false positives. You cannot just throw a detection at a customer on the basis of that. But they're also gonna find cool shit. So they're the kinds of things that like you want to grab and you want to send them to an analyst's desk and you want them to spend some time, and then you're gonna come back and be like, this was a real detection. But you didn't get served up 15 other ones that were false positives. But this one's an O-day. Like, like the value proposition is just very skewed. So yeah, you keep that stuff on the back end.
So
Yeah, the other thing I was thinking here is, well, in general, I think that all the APT teams out there who are like building implants and testing detections, if they don't have a detection engineer, someone with the background having worked for a security solution for years, to advise them on what is possible and what not, and to advise them like what works and what doesn't, they get
have a big
busted
gap.
over and over and over. Yeah, they have an issue. I think obviously the closest thing to that was our Yara training, in the sense that was something that they can pay for like a one time and get to peek into the mind of the people who are building all these detection mechanisms, which is why so many implant developers came and attended the Yara training that we were doing back in the days, because it helps them understand how to avoid all these mechanisms and the way of thinking of detection engineers, what techniques like metadata, geometric detection, things like that. So that was pretty much the next best thing to having a security guy in your implant team advising you on what to do and what not to do. Yeah, and the other thing I was thinking for this specific story was that was observed on a single machine in the UK. And when you see UK, you immediately, that raises a lot of questions, because who are the candidates for this kind of sophisticated implants? Typically, it's the 5 eyes level APT groups, right? And if they're targeting someone in the UK, it can be one of the following, at least based on our experience from back in the days. It can be like some really bad guys from somewhere else who have, let's say, come to the UK to do bad things, right? So they're like an undercover cell, or, like this kind of a lone wolf bad guy who is just a sleeper cell waiting for the activation call. So that can be one thing. Two, they can be financial institutions potentially associated with one of these rogue nations, right, that we have seen before. It can be embassies. So it's very rare, I think, that this would be someone like a UK citizen, or like it can be someone, let's say, random, right?
I think this is Apex? Because let me describe it. It says,
please.
And this is from Jen's blog post about what we still do not know, which is what I really, really like in the post, which is, listen, this is everything we know. And hey, it's so mysterious. This is a bunch of things we don't know. It says, it appeared on a single machine in the United Kingdom, ran for about a year, and disappeared when the infrastructure expired. The DLL never surfaced in any public malware archive. No other vendors published anything related to it. Was it a targeted operation that received its objective and was burned? A test deployment that was abandoned? A contractor's proof of concept? We still don't know. This is where my mind went to, like some sort of research project. But what you're saying is that your hackles go up, and this is like really, really top-end APT?
Spidery senses tell you can tell you a few things. One, the fact that it's like this multi-stage. I have only seen this multi-stage style before
Going to
with
be a red team
one
operation,
actor.
though?
Mm, let me finish. Who is doing this multi-stage thingy? Typically, the equation group are doing this kind of multi-stage thingy because
Reagan.
they want to dynamically replace the stages as they get busted, so they don't have to replace a full platform. That's why it's modular and has these multiple stages in which some of the stages only exist in memory. This is like highly specific of these guys. I thought that it was really cool, the mechanism with the command and control server, where if the CNC actually answers 200, HTTP 200, the implant immediately self-destructs. And instead, a working command and control server needs to give a response of 302. This is like a no-boss style philosophy there, nobody but us, to make sure that if they lose control over the CNC, it gets in hold, whatever, the implants immediately self-destruct. This self-destruct functionality is also very typical of these high-end things. There's also this heartbeat. If it doesn't get the heartbeat from the CNC, it also self-destructs. Another very specific thing that we have seen. Like, if I can reach out to the CNC on a regular basis, right?
And just
I
get
need
this
to
touch point, constant touch point.
Yeah, like, hello, yeah, we're here, all good, all good, all good. Okay.
Yeah.
So if like one day you call back home, hello, and there's like no answer, okay, you start getting worried. Why is there like no answer? Because like somebody took over home,
Gotcha.
and it's
So
not
that's
home
part
anymore.
part of the parameters for self-destruct if these factors are in place.
Yeah, or
Yeah.
you would see them like, a certain amount of time, right? Like, hey, we haven't heard from the CNC in 2 weeks, right?
Gotcha.
You'd have the hard-coded ones.
Then there's like this obsession with encryption, like multiple layers of encryption, right? For the communication, AES 256 CBC, which like it's not just, but it's possibly the most secure version of AES 256 with RSA 4096 on one side, and then they have another encryption layer with the XTIA and some kind of obfuscation on top of that with PNG files. I think that all these together, they point to someone who is extremely worried about getting discovered, getting burned, getting sinkholed, getting intercepted. This all feels like no boss philosophy behind this, highly modular, so they can very quickly replace any kind of component. And I thought that, this mechanism where they hijack like a COM object for persistence, where they have this DLL that looks like a legitimate Windows task scheduler extension library. This is also very, very familiar in the sense that I've seen many of the equation group implants back in the days use the same mechanism. Of course, I may be wrong here, right? I may be wrong. And what is perhaps weird is how they let the CNCs expire. That is a bit wrong. What is also interesting, the CNCs were also in the UK. The fact that they were also in the UK is kind of interesting.
Observing data sovereignty.
Yeah, GDPR, man. They can't steal the data outside of the UK.
Juanito, you've been nodding along and mumbling along to Costin. What is your feeling?
I mean, I think it's funny. Costin says equation group. Like, for me, this is like Dooku-esque, right? But I think the point stands perfectly, right? Like, you see.
Okay, so for the audience, give the context quickly. There's a subset of our audience who's not like, okay, why is this Dooku-esque versus?
What are these guys saying?
Yeah. Well, so I mean, if you don't know sort of Dooku and that sort of platform of fascinating malware, right? Like one of the other sides of the whole Stuxnet saga and Gossip Girl,
He's just going to drop more code names. Art, go ahead.
What I'm saying is, right, like if you've read Kim Setter's book, if you've paid attention to any of the Stuxnet saga, right, there were multiple platforms that were either running operations that grabbed important components or also were used to produce components that went into Stuxnet directly. And, you have Flower Shop or Cheshire Cat, you have Flame, you have Dooku, and you have the Equation Group. And I hope I'm not forgetting anything at this point, but essentially, with the Dooku side of the house, like the few times, like Dooku was an amazing discovery, presumably Israeli. That's at this point something that I think folks feel pretty confident about. And you've only seen them like in 3 occasions, right? You see the original Dooku with like a whole lot of interesting operations. You have Dooku 1.5, which was in the pre-talks for the JCPOA, the Iran deal, and then Dooku 2.0, which was discovered inside of the Kaspersky offices and also involved in the P5+1 negotiations. So it's a pretty well established and sort of fascinating one because it's one of the few examples of one of the apex threat actors getting burned and studied in that embarrassment of riches period, going completely silent for years, in which like it's not that they weren't active, but we obviously could not find them. And then you have 2 notable resurgences which actually let you see what it's like for an apex threat actor to retool and rejigger and improve after a massive, well-studied burning. And we have very few cases of that. And I think they're really interesting because it lets you know how those bureaucracies and these like massive development efforts and investment efforts, how they were able to weather that storm, which is not a simple one, right? Like there's procurement issues, there's sourcing issues, there's, even just like asset management and going, hey, like how much of this is actually burned? Right? Even with the Equation Group, there were CNCs that were still active. There were victims that were still active even after the burning. And you have to think through their decision making of like, well, this is an important victim. We need to know what's on that machine. We are burned already, but if we disinfect and we still need that target, are you going to put a new toolkit in the same box that these people are already monitoring, right? Like there's an interesting set of discussions about equities, right? This CNC is already known. Well, what about this other CNC that got registered in a batch that's like similarly timed, but is not explicitly named, and at some point may have had an IP overlap, right? Like, do you go and burn down your entire set of every operation, or are you able to sort of factor in the equities of it? So like there's a lot of complex shit that goes into that folks don't quite get to appreciate. And that's my extremely long-winded sort of vague way of talking about Dooku and then saying, a VM.
Why does this feel more Dooku-esque rather than Equation-esque?
I mean, I'm not ready to say it's one or the other, especially without seeing the sample. I'd love to see the sample. I would absolutely love to see the sample. But I don't know. I think the CNC play is sort of interesting, right? Like we saw them start to do this where they would do like a single IP to manage a whole bunch of things and then no domain in the middle, or they would try to do one in the same country, right? Like there's having stuff in like this multi-stage and then having an encrypted container, like moving that to a VM, I think is more fascinating. Having a suicide command, I guess, is more Flame-esque, but also Dooku, right? Like there's a lot of ways in which, the playbook at this point is not private anymore, right? Like when you discovered these things in 2015, 2014, you could go, well, they've independently known how to do this in an interesting way. Now, in theory, you could emulate it, but I still don't think it's easy. So seeing a C++, framework that has like a virtual machine and is this well managed, whatever, like there's very few known threat actors that I would put in that bucket. So we can guess, but it's a short list any way you look at it.
Right, assuming it's Apex APT, because it could still be a singular red team operation that somehow got flagged at some point. I mean,
Sure.
I feel like this level of what used to be sophisticated isn't sophisticated anymore. Costin, quickly, is there a lot of meat left on the bones?
Come on, you just throw something like that out and you just walk away. I'm like, I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true at all, bro.
Okay, you can answer. You can answer. Okay, you can answer. When I ask this question, what meat is left on the bones for a good threat research team to pick up this and say, hey, here's how I can advance it? What would you do if you're in Great, you read this report and you have a discussion with your team? How do we respond to this?
Well, you can try to find more based on, I think, two main things. One is the network infrastructure. So try to find, on one hand, try to find other similar domains, other similar IP addresses, command and control servers. And indirectly from there, try to find more implants that talk to those and try to link it to any known infrastructure. And two, based on the code, like the code itself, try to find any kind of, let's say, similar implants that you may have in your collection, or deploy silent detections for these particular techniques and see if there's any live victims. I think it's almost impossible in practice to find malware that with only one victim. I mean, that's so rare.
Very, very rare. Like we could think about it on one hand, right?
I can remember.
We've seen it, but like on one hand, you can count it.
Sure. I can remember like a few other cases with malware that was like one shot, and all of them were super, super high profile, all of them. Because when you build something like this, which takes time and you need to like put a lot of resources into it, it makes sense to reuse it. Like you don't build it just to use it once. Typically, when there's only one victim, it means you have a gap in visibility. So that means possibly two things. One, this particular threat actor, they have a validator that if the validator sees a security solution, they just don't deploy. As a result, security companies have zero visibility into it, because if there's a security solution, they just don't infect that target. And two, they are actually so good at hiding, and they disable whatever telemetry mechanisms or detection mechanisms are in the product, that it doesn't get reported anymore. And I think, yeah, it's either these two things, or it's a very, very high profile stuff that was used like on the highest, most important victims. And remember when we did like that presentation back in the days, Jax, one man's antivirus researcher is another man's. We were talking about the idea that it's wrong to use these highly sophisticated platforms for everything. Like it's wrong to use rigging on terrorists, on, I don't know, Iran, and on Merkel's assistant and Jean-Jacques Kiscater. It's wrong to do that, because the moment that you catch it in one thing, let's say as a legitimate target, Jean-Jacques Kiscater, legitimate target for you to catch, I mean, like he's not doing any bad things, right? He's just like a cryptographer working on legitimate European Union projects. So when you catch this malware on his computer, you'll have to burn it everywhere. So this kind of advocates for using separate implants for different targets. So that kind of produces the idea that you need to have one implant for Quiscater, another one for Merkel's assistant, another one for Iran, another one for ISIS.
Increase the chance of getting caught too, right?
And another one for security researchers like me, Jax, yourself, and other people out there.
It increases the chances of getting caught, but it also implies something different, which is that threat researchers will have the visibility and the wherewithal and the self-control to look at a platform that is apparently only deployed to what look like terrorists and leave it alone.
Yeah.
And that's the covenant, right? Like that's a contract that we were basically implying in that discussion of saying, hey, look, we're going to burn this shit if we see it. Like, especially if we see it with like legitimate targets, like government folks, researchers, and so on. Like there's not a whole lot of room. There's not even a whole room for discussion, I think, of validly leaving that on the table. And the only times when like we I think all feel like a tinge of regret and discomfort is, hey, I can see that there are targets here that look like the kind of people that you want to track and you should be tracking, right? If it's only those, we can have a certain conversation, right? Where you say, okay, guys, like, what is the benefit of burning this thing? Like, let's have a serious conversation here. Like, no, we're not children. This is not like kumbaya, happy-go-lucky time. Like, here's a platform that only hits like 12 victims as far as we can tell, and they're all in some contested war zone or some like really well-known like hotbed for jihadis. You go, okay, let's have the fucking conversation. But when it's the same and like that was our entire discussion, was when it's the same platform that hit the German government and a nest of like, you know, Somali jihadis, what the fuck do we do? Because that's, you know, and the answer is essentially like, well, we're going to have to burn it. And there's no granular controls. You don't get to, as a defender, be like, well, we're only going to burn this part of it, and you can keep the legitimate ones over there.
One of the ideas discussed at that time was for governments to consider putting a watermark thing that allows threat researchers to kind of decipher about what they're looking at. I'm not asking you guys to like opine on that, but do you think that has already happened in some places where
I have not seen it? And remember that I was
you would be left out of
it.
it. I mean, you would be left out of it, but do you think it happens in places that we're left out of?
I don't see a world where that isn't like pie in the sky, model UN type thinking. Like that's some like bullshit.
It's just some
like,
intellectual discussion.
It's just some Boy Scout bullshit. Like what the fuck? What? Okay, you look at a sample and it says, "Hi, Costin, please leave this alone. This is, you know, a jihadi cell." In the binary, just waiting for you. Like, what message do you think you're going to read?
So when Costin is advocating it, how do you see that working?
I don't.
I'm asking him. He says he used to be advocating for it. How would it work?
I mean,
because I suspect it's happening.
Like, how? You can just mark these tools. You can mark them, okay? And let's say if they get burned, like, what is the problem? The problem is that that people will know that it was your tool used to spy on terrorists. Why is that a problem? Yeah, sure.
Should be
it
a
was
press
the
release.
US. So what?
I mean, I just think when we say
and
when
that
we
is
say
not only
mark
that,
them,
but you put yourself into a very bad situation where you kind of confirm that you knew it was a US tool used to spy on terrorists, and still you chose to sabotage that operation. And like, you can't pretend that you didn't know what it was, because you say, yeah, look, there's this marker in the tool which effectively says it's the US spying on terrorists, right?
I think you could maybe get that idea through now in this day and age through the cyber commands, right? Like that's the kind of thing that you could properly argue to the military folk of saying, hey, if this is a military component, you need to have it like properly labeled. And I could see some like, you know, some lawyer somewhere who really does twist their arm and says, hey, like, there's kind of a valid argument here, right? But that, I just don't see how you could possibly remotely expect that to exist from the intelligence community side, right? Like, look at all these, look at the ecosystem around Stuxnet. It's the most documented, researched book, amazing books written about it, documentaries about it, like hundreds of pages of threat reports about every component we have ever been able to find. Silas and I revisited it like 8 years later. We're still finding shit related to it to this day. And no one in either of these governments that we know were involved will so much as say the word. And that's just the nature of covert ops, right? Like the whole point of the thing is that you will never acknowledge that it happened. So to me, there's like a fundamental problem here in that the only people we expect to follow rules is like the Western aligned folks follow rules in cyber. And those folks, by their own rules, would never want to out anything as related to themselves. Right? So I think it's just a catch-22 that you cannot resolve, or you definitely don't have the right incentive to resolve compared to the other incentives. Not getting caught, not getting blamed, not having to deal with the fallout of having done the thing that everybody knows you did, but that it's just not your place to ever admit that you did it.
Do you guys think we'll hear more about this Angry Spark? We're in April and Costin has already nominated it for Research of the Year.
I mean, I hope so.
You also mentioned there's meat on the bones for others to go pick at and advance the research. Do you think we'll hear more on this one, or do you think this is one of those like super apex predatory thing where like the big guys, the people we usually want to hear from, we will not hear from? What do you think, Costin?
Magic scrolls, your puzzle makers, your, disappearing.
I think that, I remember I said the equation group. Juan said, Dooku, that scared like 90% of the listeners of the show from digging it further,
What
right?
happened? Did the cat just fall?
I think I scared the shit out of one of the cats. Like, he just jumped off of. Sorry.
So that's the point
bad.
that was the point I was touching on, Costin. Are we going to hear from folks if 90% of the folks are just like, that one is untouchable for me?
Let's think 10%, there's 10% left who are either Russian Chinese or irrational or fearless. So let's see.
I
don't
hope
know.
there's more than
what does that
that.
tell us about
No.
the science of what we do, right? It's the ridiculousness of how like balkanized and politicized all this stuff has
I
become.
tell you a secret. My hope is with Greg. Greg Lesnevich is my hope. He will find whatever is left to find in the infrastructure of this thingy.
Let me go set an alert on the Proofpoint blog.
Bro,
to make sure
I've
I don't
got
miss it.
I've got 8 researchers to my name right now that I'm just like side-eyeing. Right, you know who you are, and you're listening. And go do some work.
Costin makes a very provocative point, though, that 90% of like the industry is going to turn a blind eye in automatically because of what they think this is, and how ridiculous is that?
Those are not researchers. I will say that right now. Those are not researchers. There's a difference between did you follow up on it and did you publish?
Right.
I will accept that you
There's a middle ground as well. Do you detect and not publish?
Well, I don't know, man. But like, let me just say that part. There's following up, there's doing the research, and then there's publishing. I can absolutely accept that it is not, maybe not your decision whether you can publish. That we talk about that with these big shops all the fucking time. I can also accept that you may choose to, for your own morality, for your own sense of, what is right and wrong to you, you may choose to not publish. That I can accept that. I cannot accept that you would look at this and on spec, just based on what we said, or just based on the sniff of the blog, that you would not research it, that you would not write a Yara rule, that you would not look at the sample, because and this is what people were doing with US shit back in the 2014, 2015 era and further on, where they'd be like, that's I used to work in the IC, and just hearing about Lua, that means I won't touch it. And you're like, what are you talking about? There's 7 other toolkits here that have nothing to do with the US or even Five Eyes that use the same technique. And nope, we're just, it's just not, I had a clearance, and you're like, yeah, grow the fuck up. Those are not researchers. Because at some point, I'm sorry, you think the Russians are never going to try an encrypted VFS? We've seen a bunch of Chinese and what are probably mercenary toolkits that have been using Lua VMs. And if you look at the source code and shit, it has words like implant in there, and you go, hey, how about you check your fucking backyard, because it looks like one of your old buddies went over to work in Singapore, and maybe you guys need to go have a conversation about that. So there's a whole bunch of aspects of this shit that I just can't go with you there. I can accept the publication side, but you have to follow up on it.
My original question is if we are going to hear from others, meaning, are we going to see anything published? What is your gut feeling? Yes or no? Because publishing is what I'm asking about.
I mean, I hope so. That's why you don't like your TLP Red conferences. You don't like going to there's a reason, right? You say, hey, we're not going to publish it, but I'm going to tell my friends because this shit's cool.
I don't mind the TLP Red conferences. When it's the same 9 people speaking to each other, then I get kind of like,
Depends on the 9 people, man.
We got to expand the borders a little bit. Yeah. All right. We got to go back and touch on some AI stuff, so bear with me here.
Oh, no.
I'm going to go back to this OpenAI Trusted Access for Cyber program that they describe themselves as a special variant with like lower refusal boundaries for legitimate security work. The stuff we talked about earlier on the show. And they mentioned that higher tiers of authentication unlock more permissive models. Now I bring that into this next conversation we're going to have now around this podcast that Jensen Huang did with Dwarkesh Patel, because I went there to listen to the podcast expecting a conversation about the chip enterprise and TPUs and whatnot, and I got a whole Mythos argument like around cybersecurity. So cybersecurity popped up as like a kind of the key combative piece of it, where Dwarkesh Patel is basically saying, listen, Dwarkesh Patel ties Mythos and the capabilities and the dangers of Mythos to the conversation around whether the US should enable advanced chips to be shipped to China, and Jensen kind of pushed back a lot of that. The thing that popped out to me, Juanito, is where Mythos is being described in these kind of phrases like enriched uranium. No. It's like, it's equivalent of exporting enriched uranium, and we would never do that. So why are we giving China the chips and the capabilities to have access to things like this? What was your take on listening to it? It just felt off to me.
I mean, the whole, it was a really difficult thing because I want to agree with Jensen, and I think that there's legitimate reasons why we may not want to, right? Like there's 2 arguments here, right? There's the take about Mythos, and then there's Jensen's argument about chips and China. And I really want to crowbar the shit out of those 2. And I get the sense that Jensen was trying to do the same. Because frankly, like, I think whenever I hear the San Francisco Circle, the AI AGI pilled folks talk about Mythos and talk about vulnerability research and O days, they sound like idiots, right? Like it's a not very nuanced conversation, and it hits that like conceptual terminal acceleration that essentially sounds like magical thinking about, what happens then. You go, well, okay, you got the vuln, it can get vulns. What happens then? And they go, well, then it can hack everything, and it can escape from everything, and it will just go on its own, and it will take over the world. And you go, stop. You can't even serve the chatbot requests they're asking you for right now. What the fuck are you talking about? Like, what are you talking about? So I understand that they have all these hopes and dreams, and there's this notion that like if it can a priori do this thing, it has this capability, that now it does it all the time, and it does it in everything, and therefore everything is fucked. And I think Jensen, as like a man of numbers and an industry titan, and essentially running the most important business on earth right now, I think he's right in looking at that kind of childish ass representation of a very complex subject and push back. And he should. And all of us should, especially the security practitioners. Because the conversation I keep having to have around this Mythos thing is, yeah, it's fucking great. It's cool that we're seeing this capability, that AI has gotten to this point. But we were never lacking vulns. We were never at a shortage of O days. The problem was observability, visibility, detection, telemetry, patching cycles, distribution to the majority, like being able to figure out how many dependencies are like actually interconnected with each other, and so on and so forth. And none of that shit has changed. You're just telling me that where I had, 1,000 active 0 days at any given moment, that I only knew about a third of them, and that I only had patches for a third of those. Now there's 50,000. Okay, well, thank you, right? Like, but nothing about the physics of the whole security problem has changed. And so I think it's right for us to push back on that. Then we can talk about the China and chips thing. But like, I'm gonna take a breath there.
But wait, the China and chips thing was the premise of the conversation was that American chips have created this window for our frontier labs to have this capability.
Right.
Giving it to China or being allowed to sell it to China allows them to catch up and have this capability while we still have this window to patch and fix our stuff. I don't know where Dwarkish gets off that we'll get somehow this stuff is going to get fixed. But...
Exactly. That's the point, right? Like, that is the entire point, right? Like, there is this magical thinking that we're being told to accept and thereby make real world decisions on the basis of it. And I don't see any serious engagement to what Jensen's talking about. But Jensen, look, you can't just throw away the fact that, like, you can't throw his argument away whole cloth because he sells the GPUs. Like, that alone, that also makes him one of the most well-informed people about them, first of all.
He was quite clear about that. There was a section
and he's
there
right.
made me laugh out loud really loudly. It was Dwarkish interjects and says, oh, I have a lot of people that come on this podcast and they tell me a different story, but I'm not smart enough to adjudicate on that. And Jensen says, the beautiful thing is that the expert is sitting in front of you. Something to that effect. It was just like, oh my God, what a fucking hero.
He knows his shit. That man has grown that business by himself. There were times when you wouldn't give literally $5 for NVIDIA stock, and now it's the most valuable company on earth. So you do have to respect the man that, like, he understands his business.
And he knows it too.
And he knows it well. And I think that it is a disservice to what we're seeing to throw away his point of view whole cloth as cynical because he's the one selling the GPUs. I don't think that's it. I mean, he has more money than God. They have more money than God. It really, like, they literally, there's just not that much more for them to make at this point. And if you look at it, one way to interpret NVIDIA's position in this whole situation is essentially as the patron saint of the AI mission. Because everything that people talk about as like circular financing is in many ways NVIDIA saying, hey, we need you to succeed to have a healthy customer base. So I will extend you $30 billion in whatever you need so that you make it through the hump. That was a great, interesting
part of the podcast as well, how he describes that kind of investment ecosystem that allows his whole CUDA for everything to work. I have to get this little piece over there to work as well. And these guys don't have the capacity to do it. And his talk about, like, in some ways, the VCs are not even in that space. The money is so, the investments, the CapEx investments are so high that only NVIDIA and some of these big companies can do it. So it kind of create this circular money is inevitable.
Yeah, I mean, it's you need it because in some ways it's similar to how China, I think, tends to view a lot of the global ecosystem and the global economy, and I think we don't give them credit for that, which is, this idea that the Chinese are looking for the collapse of American, of America is a fairly self-destructive and narrow-minded view. When you hold the most of the American debt and you are the biggest exporter and producer to the American consuming machine, the idea that you want your consumers to die is ridiculous, right? Does that mean they don't want, like, a Chinese hegemony, that they're not looking to expand? No, of course. Obviously, they want to be the top dog. But the notion that, like, that they want America to collapse is fairly narrow-minded. Now, like, to tackle the actual Jensen argument, I think it's really important for us to remember that we fucked this whole 5G thing up super, super hard. Like,
how does 5G get into this?
Because 5G is the ultimate example of Western hegemony being defeated by Chinese financing and technology manufacturing. They went to the rest of the world and offered Huawei products for 5G to places that would otherwise never be able to afford 5G rollouts, and they financed them through whatever goodwill You know, the Grand Chinese government has shown up to Kenya and Uganda and everywhere else and half of Latin America and so on and said, hey, it's going to cost you however many hundreds of millions to have a 5G rollout, which means you probably are not going to be able to do it, period. We'll come build it for you, finance it for you, and help you run it. And you pay me over 20 years of concessions of whatever. What country can say no to that? And what did we do? We went to every one of these countries and told them, hey, you can't trust the Chinese. You better buy this solution that costs 20 times as much and that we're not going to help you pay for it all. And you go, that really doesn't sound like an amazing trade. I appreciate it, but I'm not really into that right now, right? Like, of course we fucking lost the 5G rollout race and the rest of the planet. So
I'm fascinated by how well Huawei is doing, and a point Jensen also made on the podcast. Costin, jump in here. Did you get a chance to watch or listen to the interview at all?
Not this one. I watched the previous one that he did with Lex Friedman, and I thought that was also fascinating. So, I mean, if you're an NVIDIA fan or if you have investments, like I know you guys do, I have as well, and if you're into all this kind of thing, you should watch both for sure. You should watch whatever word is coming out of the mouth of Jensen Huang. And although I haven't watched this most recent interview, I thought the other one he did with Lex was also very insightful. In particular, I like when he was talking about one thing. I think Lex asked him, do you ever get like kind of resistance to your ideas? Like you come out of nowhere maybe sometimes and you say like, hey, we need CUDA, or we need to implement this thing, which short term it will mean like our stock value will take a hit, like Nvidia stock will go down and investors will be angry and have to explain, but I know that is the right thing. And do you ever get like, pushback? You get the pushback on these ideas? And he said like, no, never, because I kind of prepare, I prepare the room before I do that. Like I talk to all my guys, I talk to everyone in the companies, and I explain to them like why I think this is the right idea. So the moment that we decide to do it, everyone, has my back. Everyone is behind me 100%.
Fully on board, yes.
Fully on board, we're going to do that. Like there's never any kind of pushback. And I thought, this it's a kind of an amazing insight.
They do a lot of forecasting, though. I mean, the science of forecasting at those companies are just so precise that they can like forecast pricing in
but
decades.
Like at the same time, it's also like the vision of one guy who still thinks that no, this is the way. Like it may financially impact us on the short term, but this is the way. I mean, if we care about the future, creating the future, whatever, we need to go this way. I was thinking like, yeah, this is something that pretty much every CEO of every company out there needs to learn and to absorb and try to re-implement in their own companies.
I just repeat the recommendation I had on our book episode at the end of last year, which was The NVIDIA Way by Tae Kim, is a book that people should really read to get a sense of not only that conviction, but the idea of making these big bets and sticking to these big bets. All these big CEOs try to do it. Mark Zuckerberg made a big bet on whatever this Meta thing in his head was, and now that bet lost. Intel made a big bet on these tiny low-cost chips for drones back in the day. It cost the CEO his job. Some big bets never play out, and some guys make big bets and they nail it.
Some guys are better than others, and not only that, but by the way, I was thinking that other companies could benefit from having someone like this guy, like Jensen. Like for instance, there's no similar guy from the Google side on the hardware side of things. I mean, sure, there's Demis Hassabis, who's like everywhere nowadays talking about models and AI, but there's like nobody talking about the hardware side of things. They don't have like that. And I think this is what makes it fascinating, is that Jensen understands both software and hardware, and he has the ability to build hardware like for the future that he knows will reshape how we do software. And he software is a temporary problem that we have. Like in the future, nobody will write software anymore. You're just gonna talk the model like, bro, write me this program, and the model will do it. Like learning programming, like pure programming, is like it's a waste of time. having someone who can actually, make these kind of predictions and build a hardware for the future, I think that's pretty impressive and something that Google probably
Apple had it
lacks.
when they decided to go after the iPhone. The iPhone didn't exist. That market didn't really exist. Someone had, Steve Jobs or whoever it was at Apple that also
Steve
made
Jobs.
that bet. So there's some examples there. One
You're
of the
talking
few
about
one of the
leaders?
things,
Like, what the
Come
fuck?
to think
You
of
guys
it,
talking about actually having leaders instead of like consultants who just run this shit like they're like the McKinsey school of running a big tech company? Is that what
don't know
you're
about
talking
you.
about?
Juanito, but it's very rare to get this kind of combative interview where it's really professional and eye opening. And I'm glad Darkish pushed back, even though some of his things was way out there. Dmitry Alperovich, for instance, from the Alperovich Institute, he's been pushing back against Jensen with a lot of this, saying, "Listen, this is the equivalent of, shipping space parts to the Russians during the space race." He thinks Jensen is being disingenuous and just trying to sell chips to China. Jensen, on the other hand, makes the argument that, listen, China is not meaningfully compute restrained at all. They have more power than anyone else. They have the better AI engineers. They have by volume more in AI engineers, skilled AI engineers than everyone else. They manufacture about 60% of all the world's mainstream chips. And he made the argument they can just stack chips on top of each other to, be on par with what we have. And the idea of giving up this entire market, he makes some strong language around, like, I'm not a loser, that's for losers, and so on. There's a missing thing there, though, right? Where on one hand, NVIDIA is boasting of having the best AI ecosystem powering the American AI tech stack. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, China is not behind. But they're still not. There's an element in there that I couldn't quite.
So you need to think about it in the way that Jensen sort of splits it off. And look, I admire Dima and I know to listen to him. And Maureen on China, right? So like, I'm not dismissing their argument whole cloth. I want to understand. What I will say is that I do think Jensen is speaking to something important, and it's why I brought up 5G, which is if to the way Costin mentioned, Jensen's thinking about this technology of the future, what the future looks like, he's planning for it. I think he is very rightly looking beyond the frontier labs and their version of the universe, where like they suddenly flip this bit and AGI is here and all the problems of the world are magically fixed. And of course, the guy that has to provide enough chips and infrastructure to make that work is thinking about it in slightly more realistic terms, and also beyond that, right? Like AGI, okay, fine, you guys hit some qualitative emergent property of intelligence. Now everybody wants this shit. Well, what the fuck are we hosting it on? And then the next question is, and how much electricity do we have to power it? So I think what Jensen, is very rightly pointing out is that the Chinese have excelled and massively accelerated past us on the production of electricity. So they do have spare power that they can use to run this shit.
Production of chips as well. It may be less. It may be lesser. Yeah,
before you even get there, before you even get there, you're right. You're looking at the next step. But before you even get there, they have electricity. They have cheap and abundant power, which we do not. So they can, in fact, go buy all of the old chips. This is exactly what he said to Dwarkesh. He's like, this is a distributed computing problem. So even if they don't have the newest, they can go get 10 times the old one and stack them laterally because they have the electricity and the money to do it. So what is Jensen worried about? Well, that we are creating the conditions under which Huawei will have to stand up to the capability of building stuff like what NVIDIA can build now. And if you constrain them enough, then they're going to figure out a way to do it. It doesn't matter if they have to steal, beg, borrow their way to do it, but they will. The same way that they're looking at ASML, and I think 2 months ago there was a story saying that the Chinese had hired a bunch of Dutch engineers and had already managed to get one of these massive lithography machines that only ASML builds. They were able to build one. It was like the size of a fucking city or a building, but they were able to build one, right? So like if you create the need and you choke them off, they are going to come up with some solution. And the concern I think that Jensen is speaking to is we have seen the Chinese be incredibly resourceful, right? Like with the DeepSeek thing, right? You're actually going to figure out how to rewrite the transformer to be more efficient. Like they're coming up with clever, low-level solutions. What happens when they're coming up with those clever, low-level solutions for hardware that is not compatible with any of the shit that we use, right? So all of a sudden, we don't have the electricity and we are not benefiting from what the frontier labs in China are coming up with, right? All that stack is somehow being built for a Huawei universe that's not being served to us, it's being served to everybody else. So, and that's my point about like not being so cynical that we like completely gloss over what this man is saying, because I think he's on some level very right. Does that mean that there is no harm if we hand this stuff to China? No, I'm not willing to say that either, right? Like I think Dimitri's not wrong, but I'm not like this is one of those areas
is there a
where
catch-up window we're worried about? Is there a legitimate catch-up window? Because like Jensen points out here that Mythos itself was trained on relatively mundane compute that's already abundant in China. And the fact that they have all the engineers, they have frontier labs, they have hyper clouds as well, like they have everything. What makes you think they don't already have this capability?
Well, I mean, I think we know
what's the window we're trying to close? I don't know.
I think we know that they haven't quite figured some things out. I think they figured some other things out. I think that this is one of those situations where like, you know, you're going to need one of those horse race photographers to figure out who's actually like ahead, because it's like it's like, you know, a snout's worth of lead. And if you talk to enough of the Valley folk, what you realize is that these leads are mostly built on like stupid little hacks. Like we figured out that if we do the training runs at this phase in this stupid little way and we divide them in 3s instead of 6s, like that they run so much faster and better. And like don't fucking tell anybody, because that's the little napkin math that we figured out that makes this more efficient than the other shop. And like look at the battle between OpenAI and Anthropic on you know, pre-training, mid-training, post-training, whatever the fuck. And it's based on things like that. So I really don't think that there's room for enough strategic thinking on the part of these companies that are just barely trying to get ahead and barely trying to have enough infra and barely trying to have enough money and barely having enough appeal to customers. And like they're trying to run on so many cylinders. I just don't think that there's any room to even begin to look at or think about what is happening in the Chinese side of things. And I would add to that I just don't think the Chinese, if we can even think of them as like a single unitary entity, I don't think that they think about AI in the same way that we do. First of all, I don't think that they're deluding themselves about some AGI future. Like, I think that I hope that they see that also as bullshit. And instead, what you're seeing is a culture where you don't have the same privacy concerns, where you're not afraid of a certain amount of centralization, where AI is being marbled into all kinds of aspects of life and like the future is being properly diffused in that culture, because you're not treating AI like uranium. You're treating it like a computing advancement that should probably be involved in how you manage traffic and how you manage food delivery, how you manage people, you know, having access to their offices, and like all this mundane shit that's too mundane for the frontier labs, but that we don't have any investment into here, so it's not happening anywhere. Like, not really evenly and not well. And instead, we're all sitting around waiting for God to emerge from the frontier labs and to take care of everything for us. Right? I just think that none of us are looking at this in a complete or meaningful way.
Jensen makes the argument that AI is supposed to find bugs. Like, that's partially what it's supposed to do. The solution now becomes an open source and an open model ecosystem. And if we exceed the creation of that open ecosystem to Huawei and have it built on Huawei, it's a disservice to us, and we've kind of ceded that entire market. He's saying AI is like a 5-layer cake with chips, systems, models, applications, and that the US needs to win at every layer, and that giving up the chip layer to China is counterproductive. I want to flag something that we didn't discuss at all, but it was in our document on a previous episode, is the issue of China and distillation and the risk of Mythos capabilities already being distilled. In February this year, Anthropic reported that 3 Chinese AI companies had set up about 24,000 bot accounts, fraud accounts with its existing Claude models. The companies DeepSeek, Moonshot AI, and Minimax prompted Claude more than 16 million times. Siphoning, again that word, Costin, siphoning information from Anthropic's... Siphoning information from Anthropic systems to train and improve their own products. So we've had this distillation conversation before. What makes us think that they're not already there?
I mean, you asked.
No, go ahead. I'm still thinking. So you go ahead.
So I think it's really interesting. This is where I want to be careful, right? Because I don't want to give in to American exceptionalism to the point where I miss what's in front of me. But like, I think it's really fascinating to hear that 3 of the major labs in China are this devoted to distilling from the frontier labs. I think that is telling, right? Like, because we don't know how much of the previous
advancement... You don't know that they're doing it because they have to, or they're stealing, or just not doing it as part of competitive research.
They are doing it as... They're definitely doing it as part of competitive research, and they're definitely stealing because they're doing it in volume. But and that's what distilling is. But
that's what AI is, by the way.
Yeah. Yes. But do they have to? I don't know. I think that's the question, right? The question is, do they have to, or are they doing it just because, like, you know, why not, right? Like, it's some advantage that you have there. Let's take it off the table, but we have more. My argument would be that, in a way, it's everything, right? Like, think about what the Chinese have going on. There's a whole different language and universe of data that they need to train for and account for, right? Like, I don't know that GPT 5.4 or Opus 4.7 or Mythos or whatever are that good in Chinese output, period, much less nuances in Chinese applications and the whole world of data that's in China, right? So, like, there is no way that, you know, Moonshot AI and you know, and DeepSeek and these other labs and Minimax don't have a shit ton of work that they need to do themselves, that in order to account for their world, that they simply cannot steal, will not be able, it's not there to be stolen from the frontier labs. At the same time, how much they're taking advantage of and counting on, I mean, they're doing it, right? Like, you're telling me all 3 labs are involved in some pretty large schemes to try to distill reasoning traces from at least Anthropic and probably also OpenAI.
Just right around the same time, Claude got terrible too, by the way.
Well, you know, part of that is if you look at the output of like Claude Code and others, like they have removed the thinking traces completely. So you know,
fear of distillation that's already happened.
Yeah. So it's a real thing.
Some hubris that you're so far ahead that they have to steal from you, because I think there's a lot of hubris there as well. I know the American exceptionalism thing you're talking about. Jensen brings this up. They have more computing power. They have the hyperlabs, the hyperclouds. They have the chips. They have more chips than anyone else and production capacity than anyone else. And they have the talent and the engineers. Like, even the engineers in Anthropic and OpenAI are largely Chinese folks. I mean, these people have the skills and the ability to do it. So there's a little bit of hubris to assume that, okay, they're stealing from us, so let's degrade my own thing.
It's not hubris when they are stealing from you. If they weren't stealing and they're removing the thinking traces, that would be hubris, right? If like nobody's asking for it and you're hiding it, then it's like, what the fuck? What are you guys doing? Right? Like, that's bullshit. But they are doing it. They've done it before. And one thing I will say is, where's the new DeepSeek? Right? Like, we've been waiting for the new. Right? They've been saying that they were going to drop this mega model, and we haven't seen
Yeah,
it.
that's
It's
the
like,
next shockwave. That's the next shockwave, because I remember the first time it came around, the word distillation became part of the narrative. Now we're talking about it like normal. So there's got to be something coming down the pike. We don't
I
have a
don't
lot
know,
of
man.
time, but I want to touch on one last thing very briefly. Is the announcement from NIST on the CVE program. Basically saying, listen, all this enrichment that we had originally planned to do, that we have this massive backlog. We talked about it on a previous episode. The idea now is that with all these submissions and these AI, the same things we talked about with Microsoft and ZDI at the top of the show, this surge in CVE submissions increased 263% between 2025 means that they're going to no longer be enriching all CVEs as part of the plan. Starting from April 15, only the following CVEs will be enriched: the ones appearing in the CISA KEV catalog, known exploited vulnerabilities catalog, ones for software used within the federal government, and CVEs for critical software as defined by the executive order, which leaves out a ton of stuff: browsers, operating systems, like a lot of stuff gets left out. How is it that we have AI doing all these magical things over here, and we can't put AI to help with some enrichment things over here, and AI is causing this problem? Is this just a matter of will, or someone... What is going on, Juanito? Jump in here.
I mean, can actually, I'm not qualified to speak on this because first and foremost, I'm trying to understand what the enrichment is. Like, what
Enrichment,
do we mean
like
by enriching them?
Post-disclosure, something gets... a POC gets posted on GitHub. There's this continuous enrichment of the data that adds more context and more nuance, that drives this EPSS scoring, that helps drives your prioritization decisions if you're a CISO. It has to come up on a chart that says this is the highest priority thing. That enrichment kind of drives that. It's an important part of the ecosystem.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I mean, I'm sure that it's more work than it sounds like. Could some of it be done with AI? Yeah, I'm sure some of it could be done with AI. At the same time, I think whenever we quickly and dismissively say, well, why doesn't AI just do that, is one of those many situations where you go try to do it and the AI just like takes a shit, like completely falls apart, and you go, oh, would you look at that jagged intelligence, right? Like it happens. So I don't know, and I really don't want to speak out of term on the value of this, because this is clearly a process I don't understand. So I don't know, Costin, if you have like stronger feelings about it.
What?
Like, does it affect your CVE data if it's not being enriched? Like, is this one of those like bureaucracy problems at another end?
This is for us. This is not for us, man. Like, this is for other people.
Like we discussed this before. Do you remember when people are freaking out that NIST is running out of money to run the CV? And I was like, I was like, whatever, man. Like, just get a couple of people, a couple of bros to do this with AI. Like, so spin up some website like does all this tracking. And you are actually saying, Ryan, that but what about the enrichment and keeping up, like adding all this information? I think sure. It's probably possible to do an automate all that with AI nowadays. Do it a bit like Elon Musk is doing with Grokpedia, that keeps improving itself, and you just need some people to check, like, okay. People like me with the community notes to say, like, this is... Have you looked
at your Grokpedia article? Like, mine is insanely, totally bullshit, right?
Like, on his Grokpedia.
I don't know, man.
Mine is fine.
Yours is fine.
You just need like a bit of love, like, check mine.
Mine was saying that I'm from like Venezuela or some bullshit. Like, it was totally...
Grok knows, man. Grok knows. It says
I was born in Ecuador. Like, which, fuck you guys. That's some racist shit. I'm an American, goddammit.
Show us the birth certificate.
Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna go find it.
I mean, sure. It doesn't have to be 100% accurate. We are fine with 98% accuracy, and I think it can be done with AI. But you need to be careful not to shoot yourself in the leg. It's like you do that, and then like, what point do you need, to have 4,000 people employed and pay their salaries, when actually this can be a 2-people project with a bit of Grok and a bunch of like free security researchers competing for some kind of stars, just community note approving it.
I think you're minimizing it. I mean, I don't think NIST would give up the ghost here because they don't have 3 people capable of or willing to do this.
I don't think the enrichment was ever the hard part, right? Like, think about it this way, right? What we've what seems to be the really hard part is validating vulnerabilities. And I don't know how much NIST was doing their own.
I mean,
Yeah, like
HackerOne has Alex Rice has a blog post out just yesterday on this as well. Like they're running into triaging resource problems that just it will be impossible to scale. Yeah.
Imagine the slop problem, right? When you have all these people just flinging AI slop vulns your way, and you can't just read it and be like, this is right or this is wrong. Like you have to have like a testing harness and some way to like actually validate against the targets to see if it actually does reproduce the state. So in itself, like that part is much harder. And I don't know that they were doing that in the first place, but you desperately need advancements in that area. And then you have this other part, which is the post vuln thing, which is frankly like fighting with private sector organizations that don't want to admit that a vulnerability is actually a vulnerability, or that it's as bad as it is, or that it is being exploited in the wild or not, right? Like, so I don't blame NIST or whomever for wanting to get the fuck out of that business, right? Like, it sounds miserable, but I also wonder, in their absence, who is in a position to say, well, actually, Microsoft's lying. This vulnerability is much worse than they claim. Or like Apple claims that this isn't being exploited in the wild, but here it is, right? Like you're still missing some arbiter. And, I don't know that we're in a better situation just if NIST drops the, just decides to like take their ball and go home.
Feels like it's very, very backward move. We are running out of time. There's a bunch of things we wanted to get to, but we wouldn't get time to. Juanito, you mentioned one of the top, Brandon Levine's op-ed on, he makes an argument about stop being reactive and, build it into the architecture itself. Strong recommend people read it. I'll put a link to all these in the descriptions. A couple of things we didn't get to. Dreadnought released 2 open source projects, DreadGode and Ares. Together, they're 2 multi-agent systems for red and blue team evaluation, like just helping folks with some of those evaluations. I'll put a link to that in the description as well. I saw Palo Alto create a Unit 42 Frontier AI Defense kind of business unit to kind of cash in on this. That might be worth taking a look at. What else? I think we can end the show there. Who wants to go first? Close the show with some shout-outs.
Cool. What is it like next week? There's a bunch of events taking place. There's
Black Hat Europe is Asia.
Black Hat Asia,
Black Hat Asia,
one, right?
and 41Con, right? Also in Naples.
In Naples.
I found out from our good friend Bruce. Shout out to Bruce. That actually I was in Naples 1 week, the wrong week. Should I have waited one more week? I would be there for 41Con as well, but I was just for vacation. So by the way, if you guys are at 41Con in Naples, like there's a bunch of things you don't want to miss. Don't miss like several things. The catacombs, they were like really cool in my opinion, and the pizza at Michele was good, €6.
Michele is like, it looks like the pictures you sent, it looks like a tourist trap with like long lines and stuff. Yeah. It's become so popular now that it's just one of those
true, man, a pizza for €6? Even if it's a tourist trap, it's €6.
Yeah, but you're from Romania. I mean, that's an expensive pizza in New York.
That what? It's an expensive pizza, €6 in New York.
In New York, you should.
Come on, that's
like
what are you talking about? That's a slice, man. What are you talking about?
Sorry, wait. The pie,
a pizza like this
pie.
big?
Yeah, it's a pie. The thing is huge.
Oh,
like
I
a pizza.
Thought he was talking about the
family
slice.
with that.
I thought he was talking about a slice of pizza.
No, my friend, like one full entire pizza about this big, €6. Anyways,
I still think New York has better pizza than Italy. And on that, let's close the show and like watch a bunch of people fucking like lose their fucking minds.
The one that I think it was good. There was this deep dish pizza. No, but it's not New York. It's what is it? Chicago deep dish. That is the best
that's
American
a fucking lasagna
kind of.
in disguise. Like that's
Justin
just
has
not.
no idea what he's talking about.
And
no
like
way.
me, I'm baking pizza myself, and I can tell you that the pizza in Naples, the way they burn the crust is unique. I mean, that's like top quality, because we had like some pizza in other cities, obviously in Italy. Italy is not the same. Like the technique they use in Naples is better, in my opinion. My humble opinion.
I'm definitely being incendiary. I know a bunch of Italians, like Pasquale, probably just ripped, whatever hair he could find out.
Just threw a pot across
just
the...
threw
Not the people in Naples, not those guys. Let us know. Let us know where is the best pizza in the world. Like, let us know.
Yeah, I don't know, man. New York's got some stuff going for it. It's really. I sound like a complete fucking heathen. It's true. Italy has some amazing pizzas,
if you ask
but
me,
New York
the best pizza needs to have several factors. One, it needs to have this thin crust, which is burned, and two, it needs to have
just
tomatoes from Italy.
Dish being great.
And three, it needs to be cheap, like dirt cheap. Like if it's like more than $10, that's
the people's food.
Why are we listening to him? It has to be thin crust, but I love Chicago dish.
You wanted this shit to not be an AI podcast?
Of Romans.
You wanted
my country is virtually called Romania, like from Rome. Like I'm virtually Roman.
I get it now.
Italians are Italians. I'm Romans. I'm like from Rome.
Go watch your ballet with your Chicago deep dish. Juanito, close the show with some shout-outs.
I'm very conflicted. This is a very conflicting show for me today. This is, this has been rough.
AI show.
And the other question is, when do you drink cappuccino? In the morning or in the evening?
No. Fuck off. Like, I will drink my fucking cappuccino whenever the fuck I want, is exactly the answer
Juanito.
Here.
Close the
How
show.
should the espresso be? Like, is this like espresso this or espresso this?
When it's okay to finish your workday at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you can stop drinking coffee at whatever time you'd like. But the rest of us who, are like falling asleep at the keyboard don't have the luxury of making those sorts of decisions. That's all I'm saying.
Just for the record, in Napoli, when you ask for the espresso, you get a ristretto. And when you ask for the ristretto, they're like, huh?
Wow.
I had a friend went to Rome and asked for an iced coffee. The guy looked at him like he was a lunatic, and then he's like, "Yeah, I just need some iced coffee." So the guy brought him an espresso, dropped a cube of ice in it, like plunk.
Get out of here.
What was that supposed to be in your mind? Like, what's an iced coffee?
Exactly.
What is that?
This is what the coffee maker was saying. Juanito knows what a nice coffee is. Close the show.
Frappe, right? Frappe.
No, I mean, that's going too far. That's like a smoothie, the coffee smoothie, right?
Close the show.
Ryan really wants us to stop. We're like, hey, so what do you think about pasta? Where do you get pasta?
While at it, right? Google Metrio coffee. Like one Metrio coffee, please.
Metrio. Oh.
Google this. One Metrio coffee, please.
Yes, sir.
Juanito, you're going to Black Hat Asia in Singapore.
Am I?
From the next episode, we're going to be doing it from there, correct?
Yes, I'm going tomorrow, and we have a very special next episode. I'm actually quite excited for that. I don't know if we're saying. I don't know.
Yeah, tease it. Who cares? I mean, it's also going to push us to make sure it happens.
We were tired of hearing about how Anthropic was selling Mark Dowd in a box, so we're bringing the actual Mark Dowd here to have a conversation with us about, well, hopefully Mythos, but also a bunch of other shit. So we will be, recording a pretty interesting episode with our boy Mark. I will be in Singapore, so for any friends that are out there, please hit us up. Vitalik, I'm at me, Gabe, Gregor, Stuart, we're all flying out there to essentially cheer on Vitalik Hamluk as he drops some truly epic fucking APT discovery that I will, I cannot wait to see this talk go down. So
this is at Black Hat, right?
Yes, Black Hat Asia. It will be a very interesting time. So
when is this, on Wednesday? Is it this Wednesday?
The talk is on Friday. Friday Singapore time. So like Thursday night for you guys.
20.
So we'll get a chance to talk about it next week, maybe.
Yeah,
that would be awesome.
Absolutely.
We tried. I tried to use like all the big AIs to guess what this talk is about, like Gemini, Claude, and everyone. Like some of these AIs are thinking it's Turla, others are thinking it's Equation Group. Like Claude is convinced it's Reagan, like a new angle in the Reagan story.
All of them.
And what did you
correct.
use? The abstract? You used the public abstract?
I took the abstract, I put it and said like, guess what this is about. And everyone's like,
You need
Based
to
on the
use
description
Mythos.
of an undocumented nation-state framework from 20 years ago that influenced later platforms, this is almost certainly the origin story of the equation group, says Gemini.
Ooh,
They are all right. All of them are correct.
They are all right.
All of them are correct.
what
Yes.
a tease! Oh, you guys, so you guys have a big announcement coming next week. Looking forward
it's
to
gonna
that.
it's gonna be
Very
cool.
cool stuff.
Some cool shit.
Very, very cool
Yeah.
stuff.
Very quick question. How important was AI in this research?
I think
Did it start it?
No, it did not. I think there's a really big AI angle in this for us in that we've treated this entire situation as a hard eval, right? Like when you have something that strains human expert capacity this much, it's the perfect situation to also test the quality of the models in some of these aspects that really matter to us. So we have absolutely AI'd the shit out of this whole competition. I don't think that AI deserves more credit than Vitali, who has managed to crack something that a lot of us tried and failed to do. So yes, all kinds of AI magic, and we will write a follow-up with all kinds of AI like wonderfulness, but Vitali Kamluk takes the cake on this one, and you know, some other folks who have helped, but you'll see that in the write-up.
Fantastic.
Something that not just some of us have tried to crack in the past, but some of like the most famous reverse engineers in the world worked on this story and they failed to spot it.
Yep. Yeah. This will be fun, man. So yeah,
Lastly,
hope to see you
before we
guys
go-
at what?
Before we go, Echo Party next month. The agenda is out. The schedule is out now. Come hang out with us in Miami in the middle of May. It should be a
We'll be
fun
recording.
conference. We'll be recording live episodes there. Costin, you're going out to PivotCon as well?
Of course.
You guys should record some episodes there without me as well. Send me the audio files.
How do we
Let's keep
record
the
without
audience.
you? What do we even do?
We'll figure
What?
it out.
We get the cardboard Ryan.
Cardboard right.
I'll close the show with the actual quotes from the Dwarkish Jensen interview. Dwarkish says,
Can you
Jensen
do the
makes
voice?
a point. Jensen makes a point, and Dwarkish says, I feel like I've had guests tell me the exact opposite thing sometimes. In this case, I just don't have the technical knowledge to adjudicate. And Jensen gives him a nice smile and says, the beautiful thing is you're talking to the expert. Stop listening to those motherfuckers. On that note, folks, we'll catch you next week. Next week, we'll have Mark Dowd as a special guest on this show. So that should be a lot of fun.
Condor Dowd? It's the
You
guy,
ask him
right?
that. You're gonna have
Bye,
to ask him
guys.
about his favorite birds.
Bye, guys.
The good news that if you don't know which pizza is the best pizza in the world, you're talking to the real experts.